Hey, everybody. Welcome to the very first session of writing this book. And thank you for doing this journey with me and coming on board to see the epic greatness or the epic fail that's going to come of this. But I'm a little bit biased. I think it's going to be epically great. So on with us, we have Steve Buchmiller. He is our professional in all of solar, but he's coming to represent Site Surveys here today with us. Steve, thank you very much for hopping on. You have taught me so much in this industry, and a lot of times when we worked at other companies together, we have gone through this solar journey together. I call you frequently, or call upon you frequently, to help me with all of the questions that I have. And my favorite thing about Steve is, and I think everybody's favorite thing that has worked with, or that has worked with him in business or in their personal lives, I think everyone would say that he is agnostic, he is neutral. He is not biased. He sees the value in every position, whether it's sales, site survey, or install, C-suites. He understands what every piece is in the business and doesn't speak from any position of bias. So I'm super honored to have Steve on with us. Steve, thank you very much for hopping on this.
Thank you, man. Excited to be here.
Next, we have David on with us. David is going to be representing a lot of the questions from the solar industry that maybe Steve and I have talked way too much and been way too acclimated to this type of environment where we can talk operationally. I use it for sales. I use this knowledge for sales, and I know so many people out there say the more technical you get, the worse it is for sales. My position on that is, well, then don't say it. You can know it, but you don't have to say it. And so David is on here to be the voice of the more novice questions. And I'm not using that as a slight, David, right? We talked about this earlier. Like, you've been in the industry for 4 years. You know a lot of your stuff, but you also don't know the operational things. And so I really appreciate you coming on here and representing, the speaking piece for a lot of people in the industry that might not know the levels that Steve and I do. And so thank you for hopping on, David. David, let's go ahead and start with you. Why don't you explain who you are, what you're about, and why you're on here to do this with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you having me on here. It's a pleasure. I'm excited to jam with you guys. I've been in the industry 4 years, and I saw you, kind of throw out a post. You were doing this. It seemed something that was, super exciting. I love the solar industry, and to be a part of something like this is super exciting for me. And, I just wanted to get some more knowledge for myself. I'm a student of the game. I'm always trying to learn better myself. And, the more knowledge I have, the better I can do for my homeowners and the better I can do for the industry. So I think this is something great. Like you said, coming from, just because I've been doing it for so long, there's certain aspects of the game, the site surveys as we're doing today that I might not know a lot about. And I can guarantee there's a lot of individuals out there that aren't trained on any of this. So I think we're going to, be doing the industry a great service by giving this information.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think so too. Steve, tell us, you are the COO of Radical. You have built major companies. You've worked with multi-billion-dollar organizations and consulted them, worked with them. You've done a lot in this industry. Thank you for hopping on with us. Tell us a little bit about Radical and why you are an expert on site surveys.
Yeah, obviously I've been, in the solar game for a while now. Surveys are I'm passionate about surveys, I guess, because it takes me back to the time when I first started to learn solar, and I didn't know what I didn't know until I started going to these homes and trying to figure it out on my own, and understanding all the variables that come with it, right? And so Radical is a great service opportunity for solar companies that want to standardize, get consistency in the information they're gathering, and have a deployable network. On demand is really what it's about. So boots on the ground, on demand labor force that can be deployed, pretty quickly. So been happy to scale this up and continue to learn and talk with great people and educate. I'm an abundance mentality kind of a person, and so this is a great fit, I think, for that.
Speaking of abundance mentality, I believe anyone that's registered for this, we have a pamphlet that you guys have created, you and Abby have created, of the perfect site survey. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll be sharing that with everybody. Just an example template that I think anybody could use and benefit from for sure. make sure you're catching all those things.
That is abundance mentality. That's great, because that's what you do as a business. So you're kind of giving out your secret sauce of a perfect site survey, because you know that no one can replicate you. You do the best quality. You guys are national at this point, right?
Yeah, we scaled nationally, started in California. Ironically, it was the state that I didn't want to start in. It's one of the more difficult ones for surveys. And it is what it is. We scaled really fast, have a deployable network of roughly 1,000 agents now across the country that do different, not just solar surveys, they do other types of service work as well. And we're excited to continue to grow that. So
as we keep going with this program, and as you guys start to hear these questions, also, if you're in the audience, please ask questions. Joe's behind the scenes here. Hi, Joe.
What up? Let's go. Yeah, guys. What's up? I don't see anything in the comments yet. Guys, get engaged. Once you put your name, where you're from, where you're watching from, why you're here, why you're excited to see the site survey webinar today, get in the comments. And if you guys have any questions as we go through, don't be shy. Get in there, ask those questions. I'll jump in there. I'll put it on the screen. I'll interrupt these guys and get your question out in there if it's good. So get in there, engage, ask some good questions, have some fun in there.
You know what? I got a quick question while you're thinking about it. You mentioned the California market is a tougher market for surveys. I understand the market. I don't, what makes it a tougher market as far as surveys goes?
All the variations of the homes. There's so many variations in just one neighborhood. For an example, you can have different types of tile, different types of structure builds, ADUs, landscaping. Just everything is very custom almost, and old. That's the other piece, is everything's kind of been there for a minute. There's not a lot of new development. I mean, there is obviously as you get out there, but California is really it's just got a lot of variables, more than most states.
So some states and markets are different. I wouldn't have guessed that at all.
Correct.
So we're going to dive a little more into that. And for all of those of you that are tuning in here or have been on for a minute, I'm excited for you guys to hear about the future of site surveys and what that might look like for your companies and where Radical has taken it. I believe we've seen it quite a bit with drones, but Steve, from what I understand, you guys have, and we'll hear more about it from you as we go on, but from what I understand, you guys have learned to implement drones at a very high level. Is that right?
Yeah, I think when we first started our EPC that we had, we were nationally trying to do W2 site survey program, right? And it was, for that model, it made sense for us to have those guys have drones in their hands. Obviously reduced our liabilities and our risks of sending these guys up on the roof. Radical's model is a little bit different than that, in the sense that these are it's a gig economy type 1099 model. And so these guys are coming from the roofing insurance adjusting type space, and so they're used to climbing up, getting up on the roof, doing more of a thorough, I guess, investigation of the viability of that roof. And so our model is actually, we don't rely on drones, although that's a good practice. I can't knock it. It's a good practice, but Radical's different in the sense that we get up on every roof. So we can get into why that is and why I think that might be important, but yeah.
We are going to get into the meat and potatoes of this entire thing, the site survey. It is important for all of you to know the reason we're on here is because if you are in sales or you're in operations, you can cohesively work on a project together. And sales, I'm speaking to you mostly because what you can do with this information is going to blow your mind. You can actually go to a home and know that you need an electrical upgrade before a site survey is even done. You can know how many panels to take away or to add, or how to price the contract properly. There's so many things you can do to pull this off in such a clean way for yourself, for your homeowners, and for your operations. And this information on this is going to do it. Before I dive into that, though, I'm going to go ahead and let's see here. Talk a little bit about Steve. Steve, let me share the screen here real quick. This is how you get a hold of Steve. This is his Instagram account, and this is his wife's Instagram account, Abby. Some of you may recognize
co-founder. Yep,
co-founder, Abby and Steve. So please follow them, and I'll play this. I'll put this up again a little bit later. But if you guys want to contact them or follow them, they have beautiful knowledge on pretty much anything solar. But obviously can answer a lot of your site survey needs. So before we get started real quick, I want to play a little video for you guys of Radical. It's just a minute video. And then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of all of this training and how you can apply it to sales. So Joe, why don't you go ahead and show us that video of Radical real quick, and then let's dive into it. Oh my goodness, that was a
video. Makes me happy. Yeah.
Nice. That was nice.
All right, so here we go. We're going to start diving into this training, and the first thing I'm going to start talking about is Steve. Why is a site survey necessary? I heard recently that a site survey is actually part of the engineering process. I didn't think of it that way. I always separated them.
Yeah, I think when I get asked this is my answer. Right? Is you have to set a baseline of this is a construction project, right? So it's a construction mentality. And with a construction project, there's multiple variables. And with those variables, you can affect costs, expectations, and all those things can cause confusion, delays, all that, right? And so a site survey just helps essentially eliminate as many variables as possible. That's the goal of the survey, is to close a deal, do a proper survey, and we're the whole point is to reduce all of the changes, and the goal is to have zero, right? That's the point. And
zero changes on the contract and on the project and on the price, right?
Everything. Yep. You mentioned it's obviously needed for designers and engineers to do their plan sets, right? But then the piece I think everybody kind of forgets or doesn't consider is it's also for the installers. Installers are asked to wake up in the morning, show up to the shop, get prepared. Operations guys are constantly trying to get them to not go to Home Depot, not go take the extra trip, leave site, come back, right? All those things cost money, time. And so it's an opportunity for them to know before they go, right? And I think that gets missed a lot as well. It just increases the odds for inspection pass rates. Guys are more prepared. Boost morale. Nothing's worse than an electrician that's unprepared when he shows up to a site. They hate it, I promise you. And if they, an effective site survey will empower them to have all that information so they can be more successful.
So how can you as a sales rep, this is the question, this is why I'm writing the book here, how can you as a sales rep understand the operational side of things a little bit better so that when that site survey comes, there is no difference between that site survey and the proposal and contract that you generated? What I think that will do is I think it will eliminate a lot of the unforeseen adders that you believe that you're being knocked. And to rephrase this in a different way, a lot of sales reps are so focused on lead generation and going and knocking more doors, and a lot of companies incentivize people to go and do it. They even throw out iPads and company trips for closed projects. But what doesn't happen frequently is those projects don't get installed, or a sales rep thinks that they're going to make a $5,000 commission and only make a $500 commission. A lot of these things happen. So it's my belief, and what I've proven in my company, Helio Gold, that I no longer run and operate, someone else does, and they're killing it. Thank you, Jason. But what I learned from all of these sales reps that I've trained and all of the operations I've worked with is that if you know this stuff, you should double your income without worrying about more lead generation in two ways. One of them is you will never miss an expense again, or three ways. You'll never miss an expense again because you'll add it into the agreement and your homeowner will know about it. The second way is you're not going to lose to competitors. Although your price might be higher, yeah, balloons are worthy of that. although your price might be higher than other competitors, you'll be able to logistically explain why it is. And when that homeowner goes and talks to that competitor that they may have frankly liked more than you, and that competitor is like, I don't know that. We won't know till after the site survey. You immediately move up in the rankings and look like a true professional because you called it. We had so many times that a homeowner didn't sign with us, and they actually signed with another company, and they came back and re-signed with us and said, you were right. I would rather go with someone that knows what they're talking about because I've heard so many horror stories in solar. They don't always come back after they sign. Sometimes they're a little bit like, ooh, he did tell me, but I'm not going to give him the pride of that. But we do get a lot of them. And more than anything, I think what it creates more than anything is referral-based business. Nobody, including myself, if someone came to my home and told me, hey, it's going to be this price, and then they came back later and it was a higher price, even if it was $1,000, I would not refer them to my mom. I wouldn't do that because I wouldn't want to subject my mom to that, or my friends, or my sister, or my family. I wouldn't want to do that. This cultivates referral-based business beyond anything you can possibly measure. And there's also we have a training coming out on referral-based business as well and how to generate that. So watch out for that. But you guys, pre-signed contract is why we're on here. Steve has come on to teach us everything that they're going to look at in site surveys and everything that I have taught my teams to look at so that you don't miss out on all of those benefits that I just listed. David, do you have
one more point there that you just made me think of is the additional revenue opportunity from a sales perspective is, hey, if we're looking at the whole home and not just looking at it through a solar lens, right? There's additional product services that can be pitched, sold, generated, whatever. It's a lead gen opportunity as well. So why not take advantage of that, right?
Exactly. So the first question I want to ask to you, Steve, is I've seen multiple companies, and this is like a scale, like sometimes they agree with it, sometimes they don't, but I've seen multiple companies try to implement sales reps doing a site survey. Why do some companies try to have a sales rep do a site survey, and why are some companies adamant about themselves doing it?
Yeah, I think it comes down to culture and what their goals are, right? So I think obviously it reduces cost spend, right? Anytime you can get a commission-based employee to do some of the work operationally, there's the illusion, in my opinion, of cost cutting. The problem with that is it comes at a price. And so that price potentially could be things like missed opportunities, missed data, missed intel that can throw the project off on costs or expectations, right? So you're playing a little bit of a gambling game, in my opinion, when sales are running the survey program, because they have blinders on, right? And sometimes you get, you forget that, hey, there's more to this story that I need to tell so that the rest of my team can do their job effectively. I like to think of it too, like, so you have a lot of companies that are just super adamant about not letting sales do surveys. And I would say those ones probably have more of a strict policy on a construction review type process, where they're not, you got to imagine if I'm a roofer and I'm looking at a job and I'm trying to assess what it's going to cost to do that. If a sales guy only gave me 10 photos and I really wish I had 20 more to really make this go. That's a risk I'm taking as a business, right? Like I can make a decision and just go with what I have.
Let me interrupt you.
Or I can know my cost better. Say that again.
If a sales rep gives you the data, the company is then kind of gambling, so to speak. Like, okay, were the photos that this rep gave me the complete and full story? We're going to go through paying for a permit. We're going to go through paying our site surveyor, pay through rolling our trucks, which cost gas, insurance, hourly time for people to drive to it. We're even going to stack our equipment inside of this truck or this trailer. And we're going to lose another install that we could have done because we're going to trust the photos that you as a sales rep took 1 month later after that site survey, spend all of this money and hope the photos you sent us are accurate. That sounds like a massive gamble.
I can give
you a gamble, right?
Yeah, I can give you a prime example of that gambling. I was working for a smaller company, did site survey myself, and I didn't get up on the roof. Obviously, that's not part of my job. So took pictures. So deal gets installed, there's a bunch of leaks on the roof because they had a problematic roof. So they never checked it out before they installed it. Now, like you said, with gambling, rolling the dice, they had to come back and repair, all the damage from leaks. So now that's cost for the company, obviously. And that's also an upset homeowner. And it actually ended up being a person that was, a friend, not a good friend, but an acquaintance. So now I look bad as well. So yeah, that was a gamble, and we lost on that one for sure.
Always happens to a friend and never to a stranger, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So Steve, that makes sense. It's a pure gamble if a sales rep does the install. As far as the installer is concerned, you said something earlier, because I will put this in the book. You said something earlier that maybe, and I'm not going to quote you on this, but maybe the companies that have their sales reps doing the site survey are chincing a little bit on the expenses because they're having a 1099, someone that's not on salary go and do a portion of the job, but there is a tremendous risk factor to it. What if someone's on this training and they learn everything and they know what I know, and I come to you and I say, hey, I know your guys' red line, but I also know that site survey costs money and I know how to do it really well. Lower my red line so that I can go do the site survey. What does it feel like to an installer when someone tries to change the operations of an entire company?
Well, it makes it hard, right? Because I can tell you from experience, this is what I would say to you, Jake, if you came to me as a dealer like that. I would say, well, it's hard for me just to control how to train a national survey program and get them to do it the same way every time. And I have total control over that. So you're telling me you're going to build a team and duplicate the exact same thing. And if you can execute on that, then I guess we can have that conversation. But I have not seen that. I have not seen a national big, it doesn't even need to be national, just a large solar division, team, sales group, whatever it is, successfully train and keep training and hold accountability and get refine and get a deliverable that's consistent. Yes, I've seen reps do surveys better than some of the best surveyors out there. I've seen it for sure. But is it repeatable? Probably not. And do you really want to spend your time doing training to do surveys, or do you want to spend your time closing deals? That's what I would say.
Now, sales reps, and I know that I had this mentality, so what I'm about to say has changed since then. I've grown up a little bit, Steve, so don't attack me too much here. But is it outside of the realm of possibility for an installer? This is a question for everyone, not for me. Is it outside of the realm of possibility for an installer to, let's say like Empire that you had like hundreds of dealers across the country. What if 3 of them came to you and tried lowering their red line and they said, hey, lower it. I'll do my own site surveys. I'm capable. I'm one of those people that you said that you see that I do a good job. So I would like a special deal with you because of that.
That's a potential. Like I said, what I would want to do is I would control the outcome. So, hey, if you can follow this template and you can give me everything I need, then sure. But here's the things to consider. What happens when it goes south? What happens when you fall off your ladder? What happens when you open up a dead front and, heaven forbid, hurt yourself, let alone the equipment that you put at risk, right? And so then I would ask, are you covered? Are you insured? Do you have workman's comp to help with that? Because if it goes south, I own that. And if I'm, like I said, if I own that, then I'm going to want the control of it, right? So
that is absolutely intriguing.
Not a hard no, but it's like, it's a probably not, because like nobody has that, right?
You brought up a super strong point that I hadn't even thought of. If you're a 1099 worker for a solar company, and you trip and fall or you get injured inside of the house, is it not the responsibility of the installer still? So to your point, if I'm doing a site survey and I create damage to that home, and I specifically am sending this site survey data to a company, could the homeowner go after that install company? They're the ones that are licensed, right?
Yeah, lawyers are always going to follow the money, right? And at the end of the day, it's the installer that probably has it. They're also the ones that are liable, right? They're the ones that are, from a contractor perspective, right? It's looked at as, hey, you have the license, you have the insurance, You have the coverage. It's your job to make sure the people that do work for you are also covered. And if they're not, then it falls on you.
But what if they're a sales org, like a sales org that's completely detached from the installer?
That's the risk I'm referring to. That's one of many risks, right? Is you're playing a risk reward game, and smaller companies will play it. Bigger companies have learned and have probably been bit and won't play it. And the bigger you get, as you know, that means the bigger, more money you have, the bigger the target. And if, again, heaven forbid, something happens, and it's not really the homeowner that you're necessarily worried about, it's the spouse of the person that got hurt, or it's the family member, or it's, somebody that now no longer receives an income because, their significant other is no longer able to provide. And so, to me, it's just not a risk that makes any sense. But to each his own.
No, that makes perfect sense. Go ahead, David.
Speaking to some of what you were saying, if I'm 1099 sales rep going to a home, even if I'm not perhaps maybe getting up in the attic or getting on the roof, would you suggest I should have insurance myself, even though I'm not going to be doing a survey? Like that whole slip and fall, I've never even thought of something like that.
Yeah, I would suggest it. Does it cost more money? Yeah, there's a yearly expense to having minimal workman's comp coverage, right? And that's really what it is as a 1099 person. And those rates vary depending on the type of work you're doing. If you tell them, hey, I'm just knocking doors and I'm going out and about, it costs less. But if you tell them, hey, I'm climbing a step ladder, I'm opening up a panel, that cost will go up. Why? Obviously, because the risk exposure is tenfold, and they want to make sure you're paying enough money to cover yourself, right?
Yeah, makes sense. Never even thought of that like that.
So when we're asking an installer to lower their red line because we're capable and we're insured, because as a sales org, I had to get insured. Some companies required it in order for me to carry their product to sell it. Even as a sales org, you're still saying it's a gamble. Even though I've taken the proper steps as an installer, it's still a gamble to you.
At the end of the day, I'm responsible for what you do at that home. Like, yes, there's clear lines that are drawn, but I've seen too many instances where somebody's gotten hurt on a site, and somebody needs compensated, and it's usually not the sales rep that has the insurance to cover it. Like they go after the next guy in line.
That makes sense.
And again, I can write up contracts and things to help mitigate and put in a veil of protection, but it's a gamble. It's a risk.
I can tell you firsthand. Just because you have a signed contract with someone doesn't mean that they are going to fulfill it. But it's in the contract. Like, yeah, go ahead, sue me, and then that can go on for 5 years, and then no one cares anymore. Interesting. Okay, so next thing I wanted to ask you: does a site survey have to be done in person? I see so many companies across the country that are like, no, we don't need to do a site survey. We've done 1 million of these. What is your stance on that?
I think, remember, it depends on your goals, right? If the objective is to eliminate variables, I don't know how, there aren't enough tools, resources in the world, in my opinion, today to eliminate enough of those variables to make that make sense. Can you check some of the boxes though with the virtual survey or with some, different data, satellite imagery, things like that? For sure. But does it encompass all the variables, right? Probably not. Things like placement of equipment, inside the garages, as you said, landscaping changes and has ability to change things. So it's really, again, it gets you some of the data. And I think if you're willing to move the project forward based on minimal data, you're exposing your operations to change orders and changes at time of install and whatever it might be. And that may be a risk in a way, your company wants to do it. But, again, it's a risk reward game. To me, the survey should be eliminating those variables. You can't do that successfully without being on site.
Thank you. Matthew Mitchell asked the question: if a site survey happened after the contract is signed and something comes up that will cause a change order that could jeopardize the deal, why not educate the rep to avoid that? And Matthew, I'm just going to say that's actually why you are on this Zoom right now. We're going to go over all of those things. And so you're taking some steps to get to a point where you don't have to worry about a signed contract being changed. If you learn all of this stuff and keep asking questions like you are, I really appreciate you doing this. But Steve, you have been part of many installation companies and ran a large one. So what is your position on that? Why not educate a rep to avoid that?
I agree 100%. If you're working with an EPC that isn't constantly providing education on why they have adders, what their costs are, they're subject to change, right? You know this, Jake. Adders and costs change a lot. That's due to a lot of reasons that aren't even the installer's, preference. Like, I don't want to change my pricing if I can help it, but the AHJ sometimes changes the rules. The NEC changes the rules, which may affect pricing, which may affect adders. So to me, it's a constant drip campaign of, hey, re-educate. I know that sales, brings in a lot of new people constantly. And so that to me is an indicator of a good EPC, one that is taking all of that and providing information, whatever it is, training, something that just talks more about why they charge what they charge, when they want to charge it, because every company is different, right? And the reason why, again, is each one takes on its own risks and reward system differently. They have a different perspective on it, and that is depending on size, what their goals are, how quickly they're trying to scale, like all those things come into play. But to me, that's, to answer that question is like, no, they should be. And if they're not, maybe start asking why.
I'm going to add that in the book. David, let me say this one point and I'll get to you on that. I'm going to add this in the book. And I do want to say from the sales side of things, Matthew, great question. From the sales side of things, as someone that has been pushed to manage teams, to recruit, to become a regional, to do all of that stuff, there are a lot of organizations out there that actually benefit greatly off of not educating to this level. You'll notice if you go out there and see, most of the multi-billion-dollar companies are focused very much on account generation, lead generation. I would say less focused on quality of install. They're looking to IPO quickly. They're looking to sell quickly. They're looking to grow quickly, to get capital. There's a lot of hidden agendas with some larger organizations that they don't care to train on this stuff because it's ultimately the numbers that make a company of value and not quality. Although these companies boast about quality, they create social media surrounding it. They go into meetings and blatantly say it. You can kind of look at the numbers and see if what they're saying fits what's happening operationally. So I would say in some cases, Matthew, it's on purpose not to educate. Is that harsh? Is that harsh to say? All right, David, what was your question?
Yeah, kind of a small one, but I think a lot of people might not know this. Could you elaborate on what AHJ stands for and what their role is and what that actually means? I'm certain a lot of people out there don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I love that. AHJ is an acronym for Authority Having Jurisdiction. It's typically a city. And the thing to remember from a sales perspective is that they are the kings of the hill, and what they say goes, even if they're wrong. It doesn't matter. And the example here is as an EPC, maybe I don't think an MPU is needed, and I can prove that, hey, in the code, National Electrical Code Book, it is not required, and an AHJ can come in and say, yeah, but we still want it, and you have to do it. And so that's where you get some of this variation and, hey, I thought we were good here, and then all of a sudden we're not. That is a literal thing that happens. AHJs have the authority to dictate whatever outcome they want. So you can fight it and you can go to battle, but it's usually a waste of time.
And I think exactly what you said just goes to show the importance of having somebody who actually knows what a site survey, like a professional, because someone like myself, as a sales rep, it's going to be impossible for me to know all the HJs in my area. Like I'd have to do a whole training on just that. So even though I may be pretty good at site surveys, maybe I'm not familiar with this particular jurisdiction. And I know a lot of companies out there doing blitzes. There's no way they're teaching their whole team on that specific AHG or AHJ. It would just take too much time.
Definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
For everyone watching, I do have some very cool stuff to teach you. If you run teams or if you have site survey issues yourselves, I have a really cool tool that I implemented inside of my company. And when I've gone and consulted other companies, they love this idea. I'm going to get to that in a second. Stay tuned for this, but I want to ask you some more questions, Steve, and I have some photos to start going over for you. This is we've for everyone on here, we've talked a little bit off screen, and Steve, from what I gather, hates this question. Steve, why does a system have to be connected to the internet?
Yeah, that's a very definitive statement, Jake. We talked about this. And for all those that don't know, in technical terms, a solar system does not need internet to operate. So let's just make that clear. Is it preferred? Is it an accessory that makes monitoring easier? For sure. Checks all those boxes. But there are other methods and ways to get that information. Jake, you had brought up that there are definitely finance companies that require it. They want the system hooked up so that they can monitor it from, the Philippines or wherever they want to do it from. There's obviously a cost savings in doing it that way, and that's why they require it. It makes it easier for them, makes it more scalable, like all those things. And so, yes, I do recommend you connect it to the internet, obviously, but does it mean the system won't produce? No, not at all.
That's a good point. The system will produce if you don't have internet. How do you monitor it? How do you check it? And Steve, I know you had some good tricks. Like, for example, we can go outside. If any of you know how net metering works, those meters that were on the side of the home used to have like rotators on them, right? And a meter guy from the utility company would literally come and read the meter and see how far it had rotated and bill you that way. I remember that as a little kid. They had to have access to it, but they switched all to a digital meter, and there's a reason they did that. They were getting ready for net metering. Everyone should have a digital meter now. Steve, how do you tell if the system is working even though you don't have internet?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways, but obviously you can go out and look at the meter. Even if you still have an old dial, it'll go the other way when you're producing. And that's a good indicator. I've seen it. On the new digital meters, they track which way energy is flowing. And so if you're producing, it'll go back towards the grid. It'll go to the left. If you're not producing and your house is asking for more power, it'll show a little tracker that goes this way. That's an indicator. The other thing you can do is obviously look at your utility bill. The whole point of net metering and putting in production meters and utilities requiring different meters is for that reason. They need the ability to track what you produced, what your consumption was, and then they reconcile it, right? They have to prove it. They have to have a mechanism to prove that, because I'm sure they get obviously a lot of homeowners that are saying things like, I shouldn't have a bill, or my bill is too high, or what's going on. The utility owes that to its customers, a way to essentially itemize that usage, and that's how it's done. So I don't know if that hit on what you were looking for there, but
yeah, it does. If you're a solar sales rep and you go outside, you can literally look at the meter, and those numbers that keep flashing up there, one of them is the kilowatt hour usage since that meter has been installed. You can literally see those numbers ticking backwards. The solar is working. And another little cool thing about the meter is on the meter, if you look closely, there's some fine print. It's some numbers. It's usually like a 9 or a 12/12, 9/12, 10/12. When you see that, that's actually the month and the year that meter got installed. Some meters have that on there. And so when I would knock on the door and say, hey, how long have you guys lived here for? I'd already kind of looked at the meter. I kind of like to do that before I knock on the door, if I can, if it's not awkward, because I'll know, one, if they have solar, because you'll see those placards all over it. Even if you can't see it from the road, you'll see the red placards. Second is it allows me to know what I can pitch at the door. But third, I can also see the consumption. And if they're not home, I'm sorry, I don't do it right before I go knock. That's right before I go into an appointment. When I'm knocking the door, if they don't answer, I might go and look at that stuff and put it on my notes. Because if you know the year and you know the year that you're in, hopefully, if you know the year it was installed and the year that you're in, and those numbers tick, you can actually just divide it and find their annual usage. You can basically estimate about how big their system is going to be before you knock on the door to see if it's worth it or not. You might run into a little 2 kilowatt system because there's a little old lady that lives there and by herself and has been doing that for 5 years. And so I like to kind of look at that stuff. Kind of a cool thing with the meter, but it does tick backwards. But like Steve was saying, on some TPO products, and TPO stands for third-party ownership, that's leases and PPAs, they do require you to have a connection to the internet for one reason. That is to honor the rate production guarantee that is promised. And as a sales rep, I know that that's one of my main points when I'm selling a lease or a PPA, is that they get a rate production guarantee. Whatever kilowatt hours is on this contract is what the system will produce, or you will get a check back for what it did not produce. You don't typically get that on loans and cash. And in the contract of a lease or a PPA, it says that in order for them to honor that rate production guarantee, you must be connected to the internet. If you're not, then you don't have one anymore. And so when I'm in a home and I assess, it is going to be a third-party ownership. Miguel says, thanks, I didn't know that. When I have assessed that it's going to be third-party ownership or a TPO product through a series of questions that I ask them, one of the next questions I ask them is, okay, have you guys got internet? Have you seen a tower somewhere around your house that looks, something like the internet tower? And what happens is right back here in these Ethernet ports, SunPower, Sunrun, these other organizations, they plug a little clip in there that will read to their meter or allow them to monitor that system. This is where you see the apps on your phone that can tell how much is being produced. You have to have an internet tower for those reasons. And it used to be, or didn't used to be. I'm sorry, it used to be. I don't know if SunPower still does this, but if you did not have internet, you couldn't do it. That might have changed since then. But let's see here. What was I going to say? Sometimes this wireless tower is way too far away from the meter itself. Sometimes that tower cannot reach, that Wi-Fi signal cannot reach, and they cannot connect that system. If they can't do that, your installer cannot get funded on that account and they cannot pay you. This is one of the reasons people don't get paid for TPO products, is they never get it connected. They get clawed back, you get clawed back. They say the homeowner didn't have internet, it's not working. Whose fault is it? Is it yours? Is it theirs? You should have found that on the site survey. Me as a sales rep, I say you should have opened your mouth and asked the question. If you've ever come on this, if you've ever sold before, or you are on this call now, you now know if you're selling TPO, you should ask if they have these and where it's at. And I like to know where it's at in correlation to the electrical panel, because if it's far away, I now get to prep my homeowner. I get to say this, hey, just so you know, they have to connect to your tower for that rate production guarantee that we love. The reason you wanted to do this, if it's too far away, they may have to run another Ethernet cord. They may have to run an Ethernet cord from this device to your Ethernet port, or at least another one. You may need to order another one. We're going to see if it works. We won't know till after site survey. This is not a solar thing. This is not my solar company thing. No matter which company you go with, this will be a problem because we don't control the Wi-Fi strength. Steve, what do you say to all of that? And what are some of the things that people might look for if they have to run an actual Ethernet cord? I know earlier you mentioned they might not have to do that.
Yeah, there's obviously other options, right? Like cell kits. They're a little more reliable. Wi-Fi is, we've learned, because of where those routers are, doesn't always boost. We can put in boosters, things like that. But I remember when we first started installing solar, it did require us to run Ethernet cords, hard lines, because we wanted the reliable connection. But man, I couldn't tell you the feedback. It was always installers were like, well, Steve, I spent an extra 4 hours trying to run it, over through the attic, or an extra, 2 hours trying to make it look good, because, nobody just wants it obviously flung across the house. It takes time, and time costs money. And so, one thing I would say to the sales reps is, yes, if you're selling a TPO product for an EPC to get the funding, information is power. Information gives us an opportunity to set a better expectation, all those things, right? So I love what you're saying, Jake, is like, as you know, the more armed a sales rep can hand off, you know, the next guy in line. If that handoff is clean, your success rate is just going to go through the roof. So these are all things to think about, obviously.
When you guys are saying too far, like how far would be too far?
Yeah, I mean, every house is different, right? Wi-Fi signals don't always go through, you know, cinder block, cement type walls as good as others. I mean, you guys, I mean, everybody now, I think we're in a day and age now where Wi-Fi has become a lot better. But everybody's had to deal with poor connection issues, right? And so it's really like too far. What is too far? It's really, in my opinion, anything that needs to be done on the other side of the house is probably going to be a problem.
Yeah, and the electrical panel location is that indicator. Where that electrical panel is the distance. In my 32 room house, 96 bathrooms, I only have one tower. No, I'm just kidding. But no, all jokes aside, my internet tower is in my living room of my house. And when I go to my backyard, I have a casita. It's a little bit separated. It's literally like 4 feet away, corner to corner. But it's a casita from my house. And I wanted to put an office in there, but I couldn't get strong enough Wi-Fi to run Zoom or to do things on it. So can you get a Wi-Fi extender? Yes. But my point to you as salespeople is you should have this conversation. If it's a TPO product, be like, okay, hey, so where's your internet tower? They're going to need it. It is a requirement for rate production guarantee. It's actually a requirement. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong here. You can't sell a TPO product unless it is connected to the internet at some point, whether it's through cellular or it's through internet. The company will not get funded on that project, right?
Correct. They have to prove that they can access the monitoring remotely, and that can only be done through the internet. For sure. Mm-hmm. The other thing to consider, Jake, that you reminded me of is it's not just the solar production. If we add any type of additional products, so you know, there's everything requires Wi-Fi now, right? So consumption monitoring, there's smart products that you can put in. SMAPI is one. There's a whole list of them, right? Nurios. These are these monitoring devices that you install in a sub panel or in a panel that track consumptions and load, you know, all the things, all the fancy stuff that we have now. Thermostats, all this stuff requires Wi-Fi. And it's just like, it should become more of a habit. It's, you know, more of these products are being introduced to the home. It's just a bigger part of the conversation now.
Sales reps, it is your responsibility now to ask the homeowner, where's your tower located? How far is it away? And they say, oh, it's in the other end of the room, other side of the house. I'm like, okay, when you're sitting in this corner of the house, do you have Wi-Fi problems? No, it runs perfectly. Okay, great. You might not have any issues. I just want you to know if it does come up, that's a thing we just need to look for. Just put it in your mind, throw it to the back now, back of the room. Let's not focus on that. Let's focus on solar now. But the fact that I've put that out there, this is how I get referral-based business. No other sales rep, and probably no one on here listening, has probably talked with their homeowners about that. And yes, it takes more time. I get a lot of people, oh, it affects the sale. Yeah, you're damn right. It does affect the sale. They're going to like you more because if it comes up that the company cannot interconnect that thing, I now get to go to my homeowner and be like, hey, like we talked about, it's just not reaching. The internet's not reaching. Can we call your internet company and see what they can do? And it's no longer me as a sales rep going to my installer and be like, you're incompetent. The other company I worked with, this never happened. I can't believe you're doing this. Why are you charging? Why have I not paid on this yet? My homeowner's getting frustrated. That's your fault. You know this. You know this internet stuff now. It's your fault. Go fix it. All right. I'm going to get off my soapbox here for a minute. Why do installers give a window for surveyors to show up? Like, why not? Like, why is this like a 4-hour thing or a 1 hour or 2 hour? Like, why can't we just, hey, we'll be here at this time?
Yeah, the obvious there, I can't control even, so just put your hat on as a surveyor and you wake up in the morning, you may have car issues, traffic, unforeseen things. You wake up a little bit sick, take you a little bit longer to get moving. All of these factors obviously throw timing off. Here's what I've learned over the years. If a homeowner thinks you're showing up at a specific time, they will hold you to that time. And if you're off by even a couple minutes, their expectations are off and you've now lost validity. You've lost trust. So why would you set yourself up that way? It is the,
Mhm.
there's just so many factors that we can't control that will cause deviation from what we thought we could make happen. And it's just better to keep yourself flex, right? I always recommend a 2-hour window. At Radical, we allow reps to book a specific time, and we ask them to set the expectation of a window. So homeowners get that same thing. We actually keep it within an hour window, but the more you can do, the better. I know that homeowners often have to take time off work, and so time is valuable to them as well. And you want to be quick and efficient and show up on time and all those things, but it's also, you have to consider the unknowns. I've had many guys call me and say, dude, it's pouring rain right now on the freeway. It's at a standstill. Or there's a tornado warning. Those have been coming in lately. Lots of tornado warnings this year for some reason. But these are things that I just can't control. And so it's a very fragile moment in the point of sale, right? Is the survey process. I also think that's why correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, but a lot of reps shy away from it and think of it like a negative because it's become a negative experience, right? It's a very fragile time. It's the first interaction the homeowner has. It's like you want to hit a grand slam with it, and you're more likely to do that if with a proper expectation, and a window is a great way to do that.
I agree with you. And when I worked at Vivint, they would give us an hour window. I learned very quickly over the course of 8 months, so probably not so quick. I learned eventually that when they gave me an hour window, I would turn it into a 3-hour window. And I kind of stuck with that same process throughout my career. Even when I started working with other installers, EPCs, when I built Helio Gold, we would get our window, and I extended it because you're right, Steve. You brought up a good point. Whatever the homeowners hear, they now hold you to that expectation. And if life happens for any reason, then you're no longer a quality company because you didn't fulfill in the very first task that you could do. So here's my $10,000 piece of advice to all of you that are running teams or deal with sales reps. At Helio Gold, we did have this problem. We did use multiple companies. We were a dealer, and we did use multiple companies, and it was hard to navigate the intricacies and navigate the emotions of those different installers or their policies or their processes. Each one of them are different. So I started telling my reps, whenever you get an estimate on a site survey, add an hour to it. Now, they adopted that mentality because of what Steve talked about, setting the expectations with the homeowner. But I had to do something further inside of my offices. What I did was, because I know that site surveys are missed sometimes, or that window is missed, or they have to cancel for whatever reason. And there's 1,000 of them. The guy called in sick, someone fell off a ladder, someone quit and they couldn't fulfill it, or the company just dropped the ball. There's 1,000 reasons this could happen. But what I do in the home is I have a printout of the steps. And one of the steps is site survey, then it goes to CAD and then permit. And I write a note on the side of each one of these as I'm closing the project, because I know through the history of me selling, I know that things can come up through every single step. For example, they could show up on install day, but then have to leave because they didn't have the right equipment. Why are we not prepping the homeowner for that? So here's how I prep the homeowner for site surveys. I give them that window, I add time onto it, and I write and I say, this is important. This is your time. And I know you're taking work off for this. If this is missed, don't worry about it. I'm going to get you a $100 gift card. I don't write all this. I tell them, and then I write a note. I'm going to get you a $100 gift card to your favorite restaurant. You put the time in to be here. I want to be able to repay that time back to you for something that you love doing. What's your favorite restaurant? And I would write it on there. By the time I wrote notes on each of these things, I'd snap a photo and put it in the folder that I'll tell you about later. But now when they call, hey, the site survey was missed, we're frustrated. Like, oh, yeah, remember this picture? Remember, I'm going to get you that gift card. It's already on the way. I already know Red Robin is your favorite, right? And it helped a lot. But what you do with your teams is really critical and important. This is what I did. I went and bought an iPad and I set it out front and I started writing people's names that missed site survey. And I would say each meeting, we had them once a week. I'd say, all right, next time. All right, now who has missed a site survey this week? Anyone missed a site survey last week? Anyone raise their hand? I did. All right, here's your $100 gift card. I'd put a tally mark up by their name, because when they reached 5, they got a free iPad. And they already know that their homeowner got a $100 gift card from the company too. And so they got to call their homeowner and say, hey, we've got your gift card coming to you. We're sorry about that. We do have another time scheduled. They got a gift card, and it's a tally mark towards them getting an iPad. I turned a very negative experience into kind of a positive one for the team. And I'd highly recommend, if you guys are running into complications or issues with site surveys or missed times or things like that, create an incentive program for them that keeps them happy with your installer and with you.
I think that's a very powerful way to turn a negative into a positive. That's a great outlook. I like that a lot.
Thank you. Sometimes I know what I'm doing. All right. Next, site surveyors. Has anyone had a site survey come to a home and they leave? I've definitely had this happen. And one of those times that happened was when it was a 3-story home. And on this 3-story home, you have to imagine 3 stories up. There's not a ladder that's big enough that fits on these trucks or these cars that the surveyors drive. It's not like an Inspector Gadget, blow it up there, and there it is at the top of the roof. Let me pull a picture up here for you. Imagine I'm probably as tall as that plant. Oh, a cool little tidbit for all of you. These eaves that are hanging right here, the bottom of these areas, they're typically about 10 feet off the ground. And I use that. I'll actually put a little sticky notepad and draw a line. I'll use that when I measure trees for shading. They're usually about 10 feet up. So you have to imagine we're about 30 with the roof, probably 35 feet off the ground here. A site surveyor cannot drop a ladder here and have it extend all the way to the top of that roof. That is scary as hell. Another option is they could come through the house and set up a ladder on this patio right here. But you have to imagine then they're walking solar panels through the house to get to this. Or they can do a ladder from here to the second floor and then a ladder from the patio to the roof and run panels up that way. But you guys, a 3-story house, this is an adder. They should assess this. This is one of the things that you should know. When you reach a 3-story home, your install company might not come back and tell you, hey, it's going to be an adder because we have to get what we call a scissor lift. They're not going to tell you that. This is going to come at commission time. Oh, we had to rent more equipment than we thought. Well, what the hell is a scissor lift? Like, what's it for? And Steve has an interesting perspective on this. So, Steve, tell us your opinion on scissor lifts. Why do some companies charge for it?
Yeah, for that reason right there. Obviously, they cost money to rent. They're hard logistically to kind of coordinate. It's not like unless the company just has a bunch in their backyard, which most don't, right? Because that's not the majority, right? This situation. And so I'm going to go to my rental facility closest, and I'm going to ask them to, rent it out. That requires coordination, logistics, and that all costs money. Do I think a scissor lift is the best, resource? Probably not. There's other ways to get the information that's needed. At Radical, this is an important piece, I think, from a sales perspective is we don't always know what the home situation is when we show up for a survey. This is no matter who you use. This could be internally too. And what I see a lot the reps don't do is they don't little things like within a note or some sort of indication would help me as an EPC or me even at Radical. I ask our clients all the time, please let us know if it's that type of a home, because it gives me a fighting chance to send the right guy with the right tools instead of sending a guy, him being like, yeah, there's no way I'm getting up there. And then having to find somebody that does have the ladder, or I can get a scissor lift or whatever it is, maybe a drone, whatever I'm trying to get. It's like we want to be successful first time, every time. And I can't do that if I don't know what I'm getting into. And so this is what I see a lot is reps not communicating the style of home. You got to remember, Google is great, but it is not always available. It doesn't always tell us what we want to know. That looks like a very brand new home. I have no idea. Maybe it shows up, maybe it doesn't. So information is power. And if I don't know what I don't know, then I have to charge for it, right? And that's where you just kind of, I think, get that friction a lot. Anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys, when I get to a 3rd-story home, so when I'm working with a company, I ask, one of the things I ask for, a lot of sales reps and a lot of sales orgs make a mistake because they simply just ask for the red line. That's not enough. That's one of four elements that you should look at. The red line, the hidden fees in the contracts, for example, do we charge for permits on every single account, like that kind of stuff? That affects your red line. Adders is another one. Did I say that? The price of adders, the cost of adders, what's in the contract, how much they're skimming off the portals, and dealer fees are typically, it's not just redline that you need to ask. And adders are a big variable in the amount of money that you can make as a sales rep. It's one of the main points you should look at with a redline. It affects your commission 100%. And what I do is I look on those adders and I ask the company, what's your policy on third story? I have a list of adders myself that I have been charged from other companies or through the years. And when they don't list something on their adder sheet, I say, well, what about scissor lifts? How do you guys handle third stories? This is when I'm in my negotiation process. I already know if a company gives me a list of 4 adders, but another company has 300 adders, I now need to know, how are you guys the same redline, but you only have 4 adders? Like, how am I going to get charged later? And I need them to tell me, no, this is our adder list. You will not be charged for scissor lifts. For third stories, this is what we do. We just handle it. We take the hit. I now know that, and I can put it in writing. I can add it to the agreement. I can put it in an email so that if I ever do get charged that, I can go back and be like, oh, no, we talked about this. Remember? You guys, it's critical to spend some time when you're negotiating agreements or working with an installer to understand their adders. And this is one of them. It's a hidden one that people get dinged for a lot. $500 gone, boom. So Steve, I love that you spoke to a little bit about that and how to mitigate that expense.
And real quick, I don't mean to jump in. You guys, this is a good opportunity to get your questions in there right now. We still have a little more time left. So if you have any questions as we go through this, don't be shy. Get your questions. I'll get it on screen.
I'm going to show you guys one of my favorite people in the industry here in just a minute. But before we do that, stay tuned because you're going to want to see this. What is the process for checking a roof, Steve?
That's a really open-ended question. So there's a lot to unpack there, right? I think, yeah, okay. I love the picture. Pictures are good. Visual aids. Here's the thing, right? Is like, in my opinion, this is kind of where we miss the mark a lot in solar, is we don't necessarily take into consideration what I call the viability of the roof. This solar system is going to go on there for the next 25 years, typically, right? 20, 25 years. And are we installing on something that's going to last just as long? That's the question we're trying to answer with the survey, right? And that can be done through a lot of different methods, but ultimately, in my opinion, that's the responsibility of the EPC to be able to confidently answer that question. Is what I'm installing on going to make it as long as the product is supposed to make it? If the answer is no, then we need to figure out why. Understand why. We need to know what those costs are to fix that gap, right? So that's the main thing. We're also wanting to verify layouts, wanting to make sure that what was sold can actually fit. We're wanting to verify obstructions. Those don't always show up with satellite imagery. We're wanting to verify production. Jake, you mentioned trees, obstacles. I can't tell you how many times I've seen proposals come in laying out panels behind a chimney where the chimney's 3-4 feet up in the air. The panel directly mounted behind it will never see the light of day and will never really produce things like that, right? So we're just verifying. This is why it's important, in my opinion, to kind of check all aspects of the roof. And again, I go back to that viability purpose. If we don't think the roof is going to make it through the life cycle of the product, then we need to understand why we think that and what it's going to cost to fix it. And so that's it. I'll just leave it at that.
That just costs more money. But I do want to ask you, I want to get a bit more granular with this, if that's okay, because I have a lot to write, and I want to know a little bit of the process between these different roofs. Is that cool to go a little deeper dive? Cool. So with the asphalt shingle roof, what is it that a site surveyor is checking for specifically on this? I've heard, let's say that they're on this roof plane over here right above the garage. I've heard that when they're looking for the integrity of a roof, they might lift up a little tab right here and look at the ply. Then they'll do one in the middle, and then they'll do one at the end. But on install day, they didn't check in between those two tiles, and they'll find water and say, hey, we can't do this. is it true that they're only checking like 3 spots on a single roof plane, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, water comes in from all sides, shapes, angles, right? And so it's very possible to have water damage in a spot that doesn't exist in another spot on the same roof plane. Like that's a real scenario that happens all the time, right? And so there's different ways or mechanisms that you can do to try to check and combat that. And so, yeah, the things they're looking for again is the pliability of the shingles in this case, on this example, meaning how many more years are left on that roof. And that's why I keep pointing back to the viability of the roof. Is it going to make it for the next, 20 years? And in my opinion, most roofs don't check that box. And so as an installer, I need to know what are my liabilities here and what are they going to cost down the road. And so I might need to know certain types of information, like how many layers of shingle are there? 2, 3. You hear that a lot. Hey, if I need to get a good roofing quote, for me to provide a good, solid, quality quote, I need a whole lot more information now, right? I need to understand what the drip edge is. I'm getting into really technical terms now, but it's really for be able to execute and set a proper expectation. What we don't want is to say, yeah, it needs a new roof. We quoted it at $10,000. The roofer shows up and says, sorry, it's $15,000 because you just didn't tell us enough and we just threw a random number and I'm going to hit you with change orders. That happens every day in solar, right? Who does that fall on? Well, heaven forbid it falls on the homeowner. Usually it goes back to the rep. The rep has to eat the commission. Like these are all reasons why, hey, let's collect enough data so that we mitigate those scenarios. So yeah, we're checking for leaks, damage, all things that would point us and give us cues about how long is this roof going to last? What is the current quality state of the roof compared to how long we need it to last? That's it. Keep it really simple.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it almost sounds like if they don't have a brand new roof, you might not be suggesting you install solar. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Not without some mitigation in place. So again, we don't have to put a whole new roof on the entire house potentially, right? We could do a partial. You hear that term a lot, where we do kind of partial re-roofs, or maybe we just put another layer on. But I don't know if I can put another layer on if I don't know how many layers are already there. Maybe the homeowner did that 5 years ago. There's certain HJs that only allow you to do so many overlays. And again, it goes back to an EPC's risk reward goal. I have definitely been guilty of installing on roofs that I shouldn't have, just like every other contractor out there. As a risk reward. What happens down the line, right, is we install solar. 5 years go, everything's producing just fine, and there's a new leak in the roof. Maybe it was caused by solar, maybe it wasn't, but it still requires me now to take the whole thing off, right, and put it back on. What we're starting to see in the industry, obviously, is a lot of insurance companies are just kind of been accepting this as okay. That's assuming their homeowners insurance even covers some of this stuff. But like what I see coming is insurance companies drawing a line and saying, hey, you want us to insure your equipment and you want us to make sure that it's going to, survive a hailstorm or whatever, and we'll cover the cost to replace it. Well, then I'm going to need to know what you installed it on. I'm going to need to know more information because I now hold the bill, right? And so it's a matter of perspectives, who's looking at it from which angle. And again, it's that risk reward concept. So do I think every solar should be sold with a roof? Personally, yes, I do. This is something new I've come to realize as I've been in the industry long enough that they go hand in hand. They really are a big, that's the whole scope of the work.
So I'm going to dive in a little bit here. Oh, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was just saying, so then as a responsible solar rep and as a responsible solar company, a lot of people probably don't want to hear this, but what I'm hearing is if you don't have a brand new roof within a few years old, most likely you should not be installing on that roof. Is that accurate?
It depends on what your goals are. that's all I can say to it is should you? I mean, you can go in circles and debate this all day long.
Sure.
Again, this is the question I would look to answer. Is the roof going to last as long as the product's supposed to last?
And David, to answer your question from a sales perspective, like the way that I would handle it from the sales side of things is I would say, look, these installers, and this complements what Steve is saying. Steve is saying it's a risk factor. I simply say the same thing, in other words, to a homeowner. I say, look, the purpose of the site survey is they're going to come on. The installers have to warranty your system for a certain amount of years, which we'll get into with the licensing boards or whatever policies are in place by the AHJs or contractors license board. But some states like California, Steve mentioned earlier, the installer is required to warranty that roof for 10 years, period. And so what I tell homeowners, I'm like, look, the purpose of the site survey is for them to come and kind of assess whether they want to take the risk on of your roof or not. If your roof is going to leak 2 years from now or tomorrow, they're going to be like, sorry, Jake, we're not going to take on this liability. I actually explained to the homeowner what the risk for the installer is. And further, I'll pull out the contract and I'll show them right here. I'll show them the bad stuff because it's not bad. It says, hey, we're going to warranty the roof penetrations for only like a year or something for this many inches away. I'm like, that's because they don't know what you guys have done to your roof. The company that you hired, they don't know what they did to your roof. We don't know anything about your roof, and because someone else did it. But they're willing to take on the risk for this long because we know if a leak's going to happen, it's going to happen within that 5-year time frame. But the purpose of them coming to do a site survey, here's my most favorite line I tell the homeowners. I'm like, look, it doesn't matter if you want solar. It's not completely your decision. And they're like, what the? It's not completely your decision. Like, this is a two-way street. The company has all of the risk. You're paying $0 and you get a $40,000 system, $30,000 system. You pay no money up front. You pay nothing. They're going to come to your house. They're going to front the cost of the equipment, all of their labor and employees, and put that on your roof so you can pay it over a 25-year period. All of the risk is on them. And so it's partially their decision too. And so when they come to your house, they're going to be looking at the integrity of your roof and they're going to give the thumbs up. So when we sign this agreement here today, this is just saying based on these terms and based on our understanding, you're comfortable with this. But we're not going to pay money to send us, and that the install company is not going to pay money to send a site surveyor if you don't like these terms. And so they're asking you to sign this until they spend money to see if they like the terms. So when the surveyor comes, they're going to assess the roof and they're going to go report back to the company. If the company says that's too risky, they actually have the ability to cancel on you. So this is a two-part decision. You're just the first part. And they're like,
powerful.
Whoa. Right.
I love the way you put that. I have another question real quick, if you don't mind me asking, kind of similar fashion. I've seen this vary across the board as far as, let's say somebody does get installed on a roof, maybe they shouldn't have, and they can need a new roof 5-7 years from now. I've seen costs from removal, reinstall anywhere from $100 a panel to $250 a panel. As just a rep in my mind, I'm like, $250 a panel. Where's that cost coming from? Is that a legitimate cost? If you get 20 panels, that's $5,000 just to go and take them down, put them back up. Where's those costs coming from?
Yeah, it's a good question. So to preface that, sometimes that adder dictates on who's paying the bill. Number one, right? If it's an insurance company, the price is likely going to be higher. If it's the company eating it themselves, magically that price is super cheap. But I say cheap is a relative term, but here's where the costs are incurred. When you rip off a system, very few of those components can be reused. It's really just the microinverters or optimizers and the panels. The racking is really hard to reuse. So it's like, just imagine we got to replace all of the components that keep the panels on the roof. Okay, number one. Again, as a contractor, I take the same amount of risk and liability every time I send guys up on the roof. So that cost doesn't change. Like, it's the same, whether it's 1 panel or 10 panels, it's the same amount of risk. And then I take on a bigger liability on making sure that whatever I ripped out and put back in, I have to warranty that now, right? And so I need to make sure that I probably will take extra effort and time to make sure that that statement's true, that I can hold a new warranty now. I'm really exposed when I rip things off roofs, right? These things aren't meant to come off. They're designed to stay there for 25 years. So taking them apart is not something I want to do. I'm opening myself up for all kinds of claims, warranty issues. And so I just want to make sure I have costs to cover that down the road if and when it happens.
I have something, I have some really cool pictures to show you that Steve kind of talked about to see if your asphalt shingle roof has any hidden stuff behind it or not. And I'm going to show you guys that. But before I do, doing this kind of endeavor actually does cost us money. So we do have sponsors that have participated in this. And I want to show you, luckily for me and luckily for you, I think this is one of the most relevant sponsors that you could see. I have a little 11-second video here for you to see. He also happens to be one of my best friends. Joe, can you play that? Can you play that Lawyers for Solar? My buddy John Dodart, he handles all of my brands, everything. Those little terms that you click that you agree to when you buy SolarCon tickets, or you even probably come on this. Those are him. He's written all of these, and he protects us from all the darkness in the industry. Joe, can you play his commercial real quick? You guys, he's obviously helped tons of people in the solar industry. His name's Lawyers for Solar. Highly recommend you give him a call. You can reach out to him. Oh, there it is, lawyersforsolar.com. He also has an Instagram account. He's one of the most fun guys you could talk with, and he genuinely cares about you. So as long as you pay him. No, he's he's been a friend of mine for like 20 years. One of the best men I've ever known in my whole life. So I highly recommend him. But let me go to this screen here. Steve, I do want to get granular with each of the roof types. So first I pull up an asphalt shingle roof because I in order to put this in the book, I want to know what a surveyor or an engineer is looking for on an asphalt shingle roof. And one of the things you mentioned is drip edge. Now, drip edge is a very, you can see right here, it's just basically a piece of metal that has, it's an L shape, right? And this goes on over the underlayment and on top of the fascia. And then the asphalt shingle kind of tabs over the top of it. As you can see here, you can lift it. And one of the craziest things that I learned about this drip edge, Steve mentioned it, is when you're going to install some organizations, some AHJs, some cities, they don't allow 2 layers. It is cheaper for a homeowner to buy a second layer of shingles to go over the top of the old ones and water and get a new roof. The problem is every roofer will tell you that can create leaks, and likely will. And most solar companies will not do it if you have more than 1 layer. And certainly in a lot of areas, as Steve mentioned, you won't pass inspection. And here's the crazy thing that I learned about drip edge. When I go to a home, you can't always trust looking up and being like, okay, that is 1 layer, because I see the drip edge and that is 1 layer. Because sometimes these naughty roofing companies put the drip edge over the first layer of the asphalt shingle. So when you're looking at it from the side, it looks like 1 layer, and then they get there on install day and it's 2 layers or 3 layers because that drip edge is covered the other ones. So it's really important. This is what I ask the homeowners when I'm in the home. I say, okay, I see that you guys have a roof. When's the last time you got it up there? Everyone asks that question. But then I go one step further. This again is going to save you an immense amount of time and pain. Like, hey, is there a second layer under that? Like, did they slide it under? I'll Google search on my phone, drip edge. Did they slide it under this one and add a second layer? Did you guys hear anything about, did you add a second layer? Did they do a full tear off the roof and get you a new one? And you'd be surprised. Most every homeowner knows that. We'll get into some of these other things later. This is for a different training that we have coming up. But I wanted you guys to at least see the drip edge on the side of the home and what Steve was talking to about that. Thank you, Steve. Another thing that can happen is when you are on the bottom, when you're on the ground and you're looking up at that roof, before you knock on the door, before you go into an appointment, one of the things, or there's 2 things you can look for on that roof. If it's an asphalt shingle roof, if you see the shingle and you kind of see like this cupping shape in the middle of every single tile. Let me share this screen here again. These tiles right here, if it's not laying flat like this, if you see a little cupping shape, oops. If you see a little cupping shape right here, a little cup right here, almost like a little mini puddle could form in there if it rained. That's a good indicator that there is another layer underneath that shingle, because it won't cup otherwise. It'll lay flat on that plywood that's underneath. I'll show you the plywood. What we call tongue and groove, because there's a little edge that sticks out and it goes into the groove. But the shingle will lay flat on that plywood. The only time it will cup is if there's another layer under it. Another thing that can happen is you can see that the asphalt shingle looks very pretty all along this, but when it starts to get worn, the very edges of these cuts right here, all of these cuts, the edges will start to wear away and erode, and it will look smooth, and then it will look like gravelly. Steve, what do they call that when the edges are smoothed out?
Yeah, it's the grains on the, like think of it like sandpaper, right? The more you use sandpaper, it gets more soft. But it's the granular level of the shingle. It's an indication of its lifespan, how much is left. So,
So I ask those questions in the home. I look for those two things on the roof: the cupping and the grains being eaten away. I also look at the fascia. That's this wood part that you see right here. It's where you see the drip edge, you see the shingles. The fascia is just this part right here. And the fascia, if you see that rotting away, or if you see it like the paint's chipped off and the wood is wet, you can see that. And 99 times out of 100, so is the roof. So when you're walking through, or if you see this under this soffit, they call it, if you see this stuff, and some of it's torn down, you can see the plywood underneath. That's really good too. That will also tell you it needs a new roof. So before you even walk in the home, before you even knock the door, you should be able to tell if that thing needs a new roof before the site surveyor does.
yeah, and I like this, Jake, because it does get into the risk reward, right? There's those companies that don't get into the attic because sometimes you can have a nice looking fascia, everything checks the boxes on the outside. You get into the attic and look, and we find water damage, staining, whatever it looks like. I can take the risk and not look into the attic, right? And it has a consequence. And maybe that's the risk as a company I'm willing to take. I'm just trying to call out why that's a requirement for some and not for others. It's strictly them taking minimal information and rolling with it. And that's a strategy for sure. It's not the one, in my opinion, it's not the best one, but that's why you see those differences.
Another little tidbit. Here's another $10,000 piece of advice for you. I keep telling you that as a sales rep, you should be able to generate a proposal that never gets re-signed, even after site survey. Steve brought up a really interesting point. What if the home doesn't exist yet on Google Maps? Like, how do we figure out the azimuth? How do we do this? Because as a sales rep, you're not doing the site survey. Maybe the home was built, but on Google Maps, it's not there. What I have learned to do is when you find a neighborhood on Google Maps that is that's just a dirt lot on Google Maps, but you obviously are in the neighborhood and you see all the houses, they've already built the streets, and the streets are already facing certain directions. So when you go on Google Maps, you might know that the top of Google Maps is north and the bottom is south, east and west, right? And if you know that, then theoretically all you have to do is stick. Let me show you here. Is stick one of these little things up on your screen. They're clear, they're plastic. I have quite a few of them at my house. You can stick one of those up on the screen and you can actually see the azimuth of the roof. If we look at this roof plane right here, that angle, to me, it looks like it matches the same angle as somewhere around 130 and 140. Having that variance of those degrees right there, maybe 140, having that variance of degrees right there, it's not that big of a deal on the production. So by the time you do the contract and you add extra shading, or maybe you make it a less ideal is 130 than 140 because 140 is closer to south. So on my proposal, I'll probably put 130 because it's not as favorable to me and my commission. And I'll probably add a little extra shading so that I don't have to re-sign it. Now I can create an accurate proposal by using Google Maps, although the house is not there, so that when the site survey is done, they come back like, yeah, it's 140, you're overproducing. I don't really care. I could have gotten more commission, sure, but I made a better situation for the homeowner because they're not going to, if anything, they're going to overproduce. And we all know on TPO products that if you overproduce, you keep the excess amount. And that's not every TPO product. That's why I'm selective on those. Sometimes a third-party ownership product, PPA lease, say, if you overproduce a certain amount, we're going to reassess it at the end of the year, and we're going to start to bill you based on that amount. I don't like those TPO products. I like the ones that say, this is the amount you're going to produce each year. This is the amount we're going to bill you for. Anything above and beyond that is yours at no additional cost. And they don't re-amortize the PPA lease. So I love that you guys are on here learning these little tricks because there's so much you can do to avoid re-signs. So I'm going to move on to the next one. Steve, David, did you have anything to add to that?
You could probably do a whole training on that little disc thing you just did. I was going to ask a bunch of questions on that. That was pretty dang cool. But yeah, I didn't quite get what you were doing there, to be honest. I got a grasp, but it was, that's
going to be that. So we have another book, a solar manual training coming up called Solar Terms, all the different terms we use in solar. This one I'm using for the term azimuth. And so when I go over those terms, I'll definitely be covering that a whole lot more. All right, so go back to this. So Steve, the next question, now that we got a little bit granular on those asphalt shingle roofs, let me ask you, what does a site surveyor look for on concrete tile, whether it's flat, W-shaped, S-tile, any of this stuff?
Yeah, number one, obviously, we an installer or a designer needs to understand how they're going to attach, right? So I call this attachment method, and depending on the type of tile, we'll change the attachment piece that I have to purchase and account for. And each attachment piece comes with its own thresholds and distances between each, attachment point. So depending on the one I use, maybe I need more, maybe I need less. And I don't know that if I don't understand what type of tile it is, how it's removed, how it's replaced, and what attachment method I'm going to use. So that's number one. Number two is I may be interested in, with the different types of tile, the viability of the tile. California has a big problem in the sense that a lot of the tiles, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, Jake, but a lot of the tiles are, they break. They've been exposed to salt, air, whatever it is. California conditions just create an environment for tiles to just kind of crumble a lot easier and faster. And so as an installer, I might want to know that before, obviously, I go too far down the line, because broken tiles are a pain to deal with. Homeowners are never happy with the outcome. And I want to try to mitigate that friction as soon as I can. And if I can do it at site survey, that's awesome, right? Rather than a day of install is usually when it happens.
All right, my friend. So here's the sales tip that I'm going to give you, the very high level sales tip. And if you're just joining us, one of my favorite things to tell people is if you are in sales, you do not need to worry about customer acquisition, getting more clients. You don't need to go knock more doors. You don't need to get more appointments. You already have enough of them. If you're meeting with 50, 60 homeowners and you're not closing all of them, that's where you're costing yourself money, not because you don't have enough doors knocked and not because you don't have enough leads. It's because you don't know certain things. And so I'm here to teach you this, and Steve's here to teach you, and David's here to help ask the questions and add to it. So thank you for being on here. But let me tell you one trick that I do when I come across tile roofs. Tile roofs, my friends. This is different than the asphalt shingle roof that we were on, so I'm not going to ask the same questions about drip edge and such. On the tile roofs, I'm going to say, okay, so I saw you guys have tile up there. Do you know if it's concrete or if it's clay? Because if it's clay, you can assume it's kind of like clay. You can actually grab it and like it crumbles as you bend it. Concrete tile is like concrete. And so homeowners don't always know this answer. I'm going to give you some tips. Very simple. If you look on Google Maps, or if you are in a neighborhood and you look up and every home has a different roof, asphalt shingle, TPO, rolled comp, another asphalt shingle, one ceramic, and then there's a tile one, you can pretty much bet that roof is going to be a lightweight clay tile. If it's crumbly, if you have a 200-pound man like me that has an additional solar panel on my shoulder that I am carrying across that roof, you know that those tiles are cracking, right? But if you have concrete tile, they won't crack. So what I do when I'm in the home, I'm like, hey, you guys have tile. Have you noticed when you're walking around the house, like the last house, and I tell homeowners this, the last house I was at, they were just leaning up against the side of the home. But another guy had it in his garage. They were underneath his workbench. Do you have any of those additional tiles laying around the house anywhere, in a shed or anywhere? And they're like, yeah. You guys would be surprised. When you start to paint that picture, you'd be surprised. Almost every single home that has tile, they leave a pile for them just in case one of them slips off, breaks, or something like that. And what I do is I go to Home Depot and I buy a little scale, and it has a little hook, and you can connect it to the tile. And if it weighs 10 pounds, it's not lightweight tile. So many times I have done this, snapped a photo of it, put it in my Dropbox folder for that customer. So many times, probably not so many, probably 15 times, somewhere around there. I've had a company come back and say it's lightweight. We need to charge a lightweight adder. I'm like, no, it must be mistaken. This is concrete tile. It weighs 10 pounds. If it weighs less than 8 pounds, then the company, like Steve keeps saying, is not going to want to take the risk of walking on those things and having them break, because the company has to pay for those broken tiles. And so I love to know the weight of the tiles when I'm in the home, so that I can tell them, based on this adder sheet, you have lightweight tile, it's going to be this price. Your heavy concrete tile is this price. And if you don't know, let's say you can't go find it, look up, the concrete ones are thicker, and over time you'll learn concrete versus lightweight. But look up, if it's thicker, you're good to go. Look up, make your best assessment, and tell this to the homeowner. I've had to do this once or twice. I say, look, here's the different expenses. You can see it from my company. It's more expensive to do these clay lightweight ones because they crumble, everything I just taught you. And I tell the homeowner, like, how do you want to base this? Do you want to base the price off of it being concrete tile, or do you want to base it off of it being lightweight? If we do the lightweight one and you sign this agreement for this price, it's going to be higher. And it ends up being concrete after the site survey, then we'll re-sign you for a lesser amount. You're not going to complain about that one. Like, I'm going to call you up. You're like, Jake, why haven't you called me about the lesser contract? And then I'll say it's because it was lightweight and we made the right choice. But if it is lightweight, there's no problem. There's no obstacle. But you should at least be addressing it if it's tile and you don't know. You should be addressing it inside of the home, saying that there's a possibility that later it could be something else, and showing them what that might look like. And again, this is how I've gotten referral-based business. Again, that's only once or twice that I've had to do the not know thing. But I keep that scale with me. It's in my car. There's 3 things I keep with me: a flathead, which we'll go over on the electrical training, which Steve told us not to do. There is the tape measure. If you're in California, I like to know the distance between the electrical panel and the gas meter. And I like to take a photo of that. And then the third thing is that scale. I keep that weight scale in my car when I was selling, just in case I ran across tile. But Steve, I want to go back to you. Those are my sales tips if you're inside of the home. And trust me, if you are not doing those, you are not getting referral-based business. I've been told quite a bit that on these concrete tile adders, it's the paper underneath, the felt paper, the black paper that goes underneath. They call it felt. How are you guys checking that on site survey?
Yeah. So again, every client's different, right, with their risk and reward model. But if a client is interested in understanding what's underneath, it's because they're interested in what the total cost is going to be to make it right, or make it, viable.
It's not even the customer; it's the company that comes back.
Yeah,
and
that's
says,
I'm we're saying the same thing. And so an easy way to kind of help check that box is to lift the tile from multiple locations on the roof plane. And the reason we say multiple locations is because sometimes the roof, rain, weather conditions, sun, they come from all different angles, shapes. It doesn't care. And so one section of the roof might be more exposed to damage than another. And so oftentimes what we find is if we go to the upper right-hand corner and lift a tile and the felt looks good, like it doesn't look like it's had any water damage. It looks like the day it was installed. But then I'll go over to the other side of the roof, maybe more towards the bottom, and all of a sudden the felt paper's all corroded and basically crumbles. And the reason why is, well, there's a leak somewhere. There's an issue with the roof. And if I had just checked the one spot and called it good, I might be exposing my company to a liability that I didn't know about that now I'm going to have to own, right? And so it's just a way to mitigate some of that risk. So best practice, something we do at Radical, is we lift multiple tiles and check the felt underneath as well. We also weigh it, just like Jake said. I would, Jake, I would be curious, because I've gotten this feedback before on a brand new tile that's been sitting in the garage will always weigh more than the tile that's been sitting up on the roof for the last 10 years. So I don't know personally, I have no idea what that discrepancy would be, but it's something you've sparked interest in my mind, is like, I'd be curious what the differences are over time. And
that's incredible. I never thought about that. You're probably right. The sun is bleaching it all year long, sitting there like eroding it away.
Yeah, and eroding it just little bits. I assume that would affect, but is it enough to matter? That I don't know. I would need to pull on a roofing expert for that. But
yeah, I'm gonna add, because this is gonna go in the book, so I'm gonna ask that question. That's a really good point. Thank you, Steve. Erosion of concrete for weight.
Yeah,
That's
but it
good to
should be
know.
based on
felt
the
paper is a
erosion.
good indicator on the viability, right? That's really what it's about.
It's based on when it's brand new. That's what the weight's going to be based on, right?
Yeah, that's what it is when it's brand new up there. But I would wager it's going to be less on it, depending on how long it's been up on the roof. But
interesting. Okay,
anyway.
So that's good to know. I didn't know that, but you did hear it. Like weigh your tiles if you can when you're there. Look up there, learn the differences in the tiles, and if you don't know, that's okay. In this solar manual training, you're going to see roof sections. If you're interested in concrete tile, just show up for that one. For those of you that registered, probably all of you on here, we'll be sending you reminders of the ones that are coming up as well, and you'll see us posting on our socials. But Steve, thank you for that. Next one I wanted to go over. Let me ask you on this one still. I like what you said, because I never thought of this. I never assessed that. These valleys right here, where the water would be running from the top of the roof and then top of the roof over here, these valleys, they'll probably get more water than over here on the left-hand corner where it's just right. And so, I guess more damage would likely happen over there. Makes sense.
It's just, it's exposed to more of the elements, right? More of the time, and a higher probability that it's, if there was issues, it would be there. Yeah,
Matthew Mitchell, thank you for commenting so frequently. Everyone else that's on here, feel free to ask questions. The only way that this book is going to be as robust as it is, and you learning and being on here, is engaging and asking questions. We want all of the data and info. This is for the whole solar industry. So thank you, Matthew Mitchell, for doing that. And thank you for the props. Jag and Chance, good to see you on there. Next one I want to go to is going to be, let's see here. The lightweight and wood shake roofs. I wish I put something on here explaining what battens were. I didn't, but I want you guys to know, with this wood shake and the lightweight clay, when you go inside of the attic, what you're not seeing is all that thick 3/4 inch plywood. Typically when these homes were built, and Steve, please correct me at any point, this is the way I understand it. But when these homes were built, a lot of times when it has this lightweight tile, it's typically because it was an older home and there was different specifications for builders back then. And they used a lighter weight material because the trusses that are in the attic, those trusses, they're not able to hold the weight of asphalt shingle or the weight of a 10-pound concrete tile. So what they did to supplement was they added this wood shake. It's literally pieces of wood shaped in squares. They added wood shake, or they added this lightweight clay in order to have a rooftop that is not going to collapse the integrity of the roof. When this occurs, when they use these types of materials, it is pretty safe to assume that you should walk away from that project, not even knock the door, probably not even hold the appointment, unless they are willing to get a whole new roof plus all of the cost of the plywood. Steve, what do you say as a site surveyor that shows up to these types of roofs?
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the company's willingness to take that risk or not. But in my experience, it's typically, unless the roof's getting replaced, it's not a liability we're taking on. I've tried to install on many Spanish clay type homes and the damage didn't offset any money that I made just to install solar. It was just like not worth the time, right? Basically. And then I love the point that you made about, look, these homes were built at a different time and era. And nowhere was there ever a thought or consideration that somebody's going to be up on the roof walking around installing solar, obviously. And so it may seem weird that this home was built and passed and, people are living in it. And it's like, from our perspective today, looks like a really chintzy job or whatever. But, that's why, that's part of what makes California harder. And some of these other, older markets, like Chicago, or the Northeast, where you've got these older neighborhoods, homes that were built with a different understanding and perspective of what they felt like quality should be at the time. And, of course they wouldn't take into consideration anybody walking on the roof. That's just not something that's normal. So anyway, it's a good point to make that these are things you got to look out for.
Yeah. And everyone, for a sales tip, when I'm inside of a home, and I assess that it's wood shake or it's clay tile. Let's say it's an appointment. I did say to walk away, but there's something else you can do if you don't want to walk away. If you have a golden nugget and you haven't gotten many of them recently, you need a little pick me up and you want to understand that this is a good product, what you can do is you can sit in the home and talk with the homeowner and use that line. I told you, this isn't 100% your choice. It's the other companies too. One of the things they're going to look for, and we can assess real quick if you are able to get solar or not. We might not even have to go through this process, and all those companies that you wanted to meet with, you might not have to meet with them either, or you can meet with them with a different understanding on how this project will go. If you'll allow me to look up inside of your attic, all I need to see is if I see plywood, then we can do it. If I don't see plywood, then you're going to run into a bigger obstacle and you might have to buy a whole new roof just to get solar, and that might talk you right out of doing solar altogether. So would you mind if I took a look real quick? That simple.
Yeah, that's powerful. I gotta say, this is not a question, but this has been super educational for me, and everyone on this call is getting a ton of value. Just coming from a sales rep perspective, we're kind of taught to, build, to do some pullbacks and some takeaways. And oftentimes I've kind of used that takeaway, that, hey, I'm not sure if we can do this project. We have to get the site survey going, but not really understanding the intricacies. Now knowing this, I can see it's a fact. We might not be able to do this project because the installer doesn't want to take on the liability because your roof is just not in good shape for it. That empowers me to be more genuine when I'm saying it, and the customer feels that energy. So I really appreciate you guys, doing this. That alone, that's some nuggets right there. Like, everybody should be using that.
Thank you, David. Yeah, it's why we want to do this, is we want to educate the industry a bit more. And, this being the first session, I do appreciate everyone that's come on here, and especially you and Steve. Thank you very much. Someone I didn't mention that is on with us as well. I'm going to add him to the stage, but you can't see him. He's there. He's always there. His name is Sean. Sean does a lot of the marketing. He handles a lot of the email drips that you get, the registration links, the background that I have. Sean is responsible for all the prettiness and the logistics that happen in all of these companies. Without him, oh, there he is. Hey, Sean. Well, that's all you guys get. But he handled a lot of SolarCon. He's phenomenal. He worked at Freedom Forever as well. Did the marketing for them. And this man actually knows some solar. Steve and I were jamming on internet the other day, and I was trying to make a point to Steve, be like, Steve, people don't know this. Sean, tell them about the internet. What do you know? And Sean just went off and listed everything. I'm like, Sean, you ruined my point.
I know a lot of words. Man. That's all.
Sean, thank you for everything you do.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks everybody for joining. I appreciate it.
But we did cover a term, trusses, and some people might not know what those are. Those are basically the ribs inside of an attic. They look like this. They're always at different angles and have different types of builds to them. But these are the trusses. They're basically 2x4s, and this is what solar is fastened to, the racking. They drill through the roof, and they want to hit one of these studs right here and get the bolt inside of that, because you may not know this, but when solar is installed, every city, or AHJ as we properly call it, has a wind resistance stipulation. Some it has to withstand winds of going up to 140 miles an hour, 120 miles an hour. why do you have to punch holes through my roof, or why do you have to put holes in my roof? It's like, well, it's not us. Trust me, we don't want to, because we have to take on that liability. If your roof leaks, you're going to call us and be like, you come fix this. We don't want to. It's the city that requires us to do it, because if a windstorm comes, they want to know that this doesn't blow off, and we have to fasten it to be able to withstand winds up to 140 miles an hour. Here. Now, if anyone has a CAD design, any one of you have a CAD, you can actually go through your CAD and find the wind speed. It's on all of your CADs in your area. Sometimes it's 120, 130, 100, whatever. But that's one of the clean answers that I like to give to homeowners. Is it's not us that wants to do it. You understand that it's your city. We're on your team, and they like that. But
what's a
yeah,
CAD?
go ahead.
What's a CAD?
Let me show you. That's on our terms. That's on our terms training as well. But a CAD, this is our terms training photos. So you guys might see some things that are not relative to this. I don't have it up here right now, but a CAD is those drawings that you see that are black and white like this. A lot of times, have you guys seen those? They take these plans into the permitting office into the city, and the city gives a stamp of yes, this looks good, and no, it doesn't. I don't have another picture of the CAD on these, but I do another training. So, good question. We'll be sure to cover that one, David.
Great.
Okay, next up, Steve. Thanks for doing it. I know this has taken a lot of time, but this is helping tremendously. A lot of sales reps and the book. Thank you.
For sure. Just to add to that too, Jake, as far as the truss work and rafters and things like that, yes, it's good to determine wind load speeds, and it helps the CAD team. CAD, by the way, is another. It's just a software that's used to develop what I call, which the term should be plan set. It's a blueprint essentially for the construction of the project. It tells installers and inspectors how it's going to be attached. And one of the things that I think is good to add there, Jake, is we're also checking the structural integrity, and that will vary based on the size of those trusses and how often they're spaced. Sometimes they're spaced 24 inches, sometimes they're spaced 48 inches, sometimes whatever.
16.
That changes the load bearing capabilities of that roof, because that matters in some situations, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not always do they have plywood, the trusses. So in a lot of site survey photos, if you ever have the honor of going through a site survey photo shoot, it's not an honor, it's kind of boring. But if you ever look through it, you'll see measurements, tape measure of the distance between the trusses. In fact, if you are a sales rep that works at one of those companies that asks you to do a site survey, that may very, very well be one of the requirements they have is measuring the distance of those trusses. It's very important. What up from Scottsdale? What up, DC? DC, tell us your full name, dog. Is that it, DC? I like it. Let me go back to this. So we've now kind of understood and assessed clay tile. So yeah, those trusses are going to be further apart on a lightweight tile roof type. Next, here we go. So next we have rolled composition, very similar to asphalt shingle. It's just not in pieces. It's in one big roll. The roofers call this torch down because, as you can see, there's a torch that will heat up the backside of it so that the adhesive begins to stick to that roof type. Steve, what is it that a surveyor is looking to take photographs of that they would supply to a company to assess whether this roof is good to go or not?
Yeah, again, it's looking at the overall age of the rolled comp, right? Does it look like it's deteriorating? Does it look like it's going to last? Again, we go back to that word viability. It also will help them determine how they're, again, going back to what type of attachment they're going to use. There are several products out there, and each situation is unique. And so I might change the type of product I use based on the type of rolled comp or the way that it's laid out, or
really?
Just different different aspects. So it's nice to have context photos about how it was kind of maybe installed, to help me kind of maybe make a better decision about what attachment method I might want to use. So
okay, well that brings a question for me. I always thought that they used C cups with Chem curb on rolled comp. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think that the different types of rolled comp dictated what type of fastening.
That's one of many attachment methods, and they all have their pros and cons, just like any other products out there, right? But there are new. This is what I love about our industry, right? It's always innovating. There is always, every year I go to RE Plus or SolarCon or any of these trade shows where new products can be introduced. It's a great opportunity to come and just see what's out there. And this is where I enjoy it the most, is I get to see people's innovation on new products and things that I can use as an installer to help reduce labor costs, liabilities, all those things make my life easier, right? So yeah, Kurt, that's one, used to be the most common adopted method, but there's since been new ones that have been kind of put out in the market. So
wow, thank you. I definitely would have missed that in this book, so thank you. All right, next up. Next roof type is we have TPO. Does this stand for anything?
Yeah, it's like thermoplastic, I think. Don't quote me on that. It's something in that vein. It's essentially, it's indicating the type of material, right, that's used here. It's more of a PVC type material, plastic material. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a thick piece of plastic, and they do come in white. They do come in different colors. Typically, it's white or lighter gray. I'm told is a bit more efficient to reflect the sun. But this product is actually, it's not BS. This one actually does make the home more efficient. And if you are dealing with a low slope roof, or what sales reps I used to call a flat roof, technically it's actually called a low slope roof because no roof is flat because water has to run at some point. But a low sloped roof with TPO product is far superior than a rolled comp product. It lasts longer, makes the home more efficient. The problem is it's more expensive. Steve, what is it like for an installer to install on TPO? Should we expect an adder on this? Do all companies do it? Why not? Tell us a little bit about TPO.
100%. Obviously, the attachment method costs more money. Those products, to get it to attach properly, costs way more money, probably double what it costs a normal attachment. And then the time, right? My time on the roof is going to be longer because I have to sit and heat up different elements. I just have to take more time on that one attachment, whereas like a normal standard one, boom, they go in real fast and I just keep going. These ones take a little bit more care, thus more time. So
thank you. So I guess my thought, let's see, Matthew Mitchell, teach the installers how to heat weld for TPO. What is heat welding, Steve?
That's what he's talking about, is just the ability to heat. There's different products that you can just heat up and they then basically create a nice adhesive quality attachment there.
Nice little bond.
Yeah, bond. That's the word I'm looking for.
Cool. So on these TPO products, I worked with a company. This is my sales tip for you. I worked with a company that did not do TPO. They didn't list it on their adder sheet. But I knew what Steve said. It's more expensive. And I didn't know the price. And I knew concrete tile where we're at was 5 cents. I overdid it. I overshot like a mother trucker on this one. I added 25 cents to the project for that TPO because I didn't know what it was going to be. And when I brought it back to the installation company, they said, we don't do TPO. And I'm like, I know, because it's more expensive. It takes more time for your labor. I get it. But I did put 25 cents in there for it. Can you do it for 25 cents? And operationally, they'll be like, no, because it's a one-off and it would hurt our operations, our systems and processes that we built in our CRM. As far as our employees are trained, like all these variables, it's not just about can we do the project or not. They may have the ability, but it could also screw up all of their operational systems and protections that they've set in place for a one-off job. And that's okay. This company did tell me they couldn't do it for that reason. And so I went to another company and asked if they could do it. And they only charged 10 cents for TPO. And so I went back to the homeowner and I lowered the contract. And again, if we're talking about referral-based business, that's how you get it. You figure out what's going to happen before you sell it and close it. And you figure out all of the problems and logistics on the backside of things. And you only come back to them to make it better, not worse. Okay.
Just something to consider there, Jake. TPO, anytime you're installing with products that aren't kind of fall into the norm, I guess, or the higher percentage volume, have a higher risk of liability, right? So that's another thing to consider from an EPC's perspective is,
okay.
Yes, they cost more money, but also they're more likely to have problems. They're more likely to have issues, leaks, things go wrong. And that's maybe not be worth, or, that might not be my goal as an EPC, is to have those in my pipeline.
That's actually a good point. I've been in a meeting
ground mounts, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in a meeting where I've heard you actually advise the C-suite, like don't do TPO or I think it was TPO. Don't do it. Don't add it to your adder list. Just it's when we were creating that adder, like just take it off. Like as far as the company goes, for the amount of times you're going to run into it versus building the operations and training the people to do it to mitigate that that liability that we're taking on, it's the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Basically, is what I heard you say, right?
That's it. And again, it depends on the company's goals.
Now, as Radical, as an unbiased neutral entity, do you do site surveys for all roof types?
We do site surveys for all roof types. There's no, one of the benefits with Radical, obviously, is the templates are customizable, meaning the clients dictate what information they want us to gather. It doesn't even matter. So, yeah, we do flat roofs, TPOs, wood shake assessments, clay tile assessments, like whatever it is. We'll make sure we get you enough information to make a good decision.
Very cool. You guys, Radical. And for those of you that just joined us, they do have a little commercial. We're going to play it here for a second, and I'm going to get to some of the really awesome stuff that you get to put in the site survey information. The stuff that we're going to go over next is probably going to help you the very most, because I could imagine you're not going to talk about roofs on every single project. This is just information for you to know, so you know how to price it properly and to set expectations with homeowners in case they have these different roof types. But Joe, if you're there, could you play Radical's commercial first? Show us what Radical's about a little bit here. You guys, that is so awesome. For anyone that deals with videos, we do with SolarCon and all these other brands we do. That is an incredible video. That content that they got in there is not cheap. It is well thought out, great branding. That's awesome, Steve. Thank you. Steve, this isn't part of the book, but just curious. I was there when you guys first started Radical. I think it was just you and Abby. You guys were grinding inside of that office. We went and filmed the Matrix. Remember that? How much have you grown since then? Where are you guys at?
Yeah, then we were, I think, doing maybe 20 to 40 surveys a month. And last month we tipped over the 750 mark. So grown quite a bit since then. It's been a little over a year now, I think. So we do a lot of surveys at scale for sure. So I've seen all types of homes, all types of scenarios, like everything you can come across. I've seen it for sure.
Yeah, thank you again for being on with us. Okay, guys, we're gonna get to the good stuff. Like I promised you, we have a couple more roofs to go through. One of them is my favorite to talk about. Then we're gonna start to get into some really cool things for you to start implementing in your sales. I know we've been going for 2 hours. Steve, David, thank you for being players on this. Steve, I know you're incredibly busy. If you need to hop off, I know a lot of this stuff as well. It's just those fine little niche things that you're bringing to the table I love. So if you have to, let us know. But I'd love to finish this out with you if you're able. You guys, tar and gravel roofs, we don't see those very frequently. Those are also on a sloped roof. I'm going to tell you, have these buckets and they go up there with mops and they mop that tar around everywhere, and then they throw gravel over the top of it. Now you have to imagine when they get up there to install on this roof, you guys saw those C cups with the chem curb. You imagine these little gravel granular things here. If we were to actually brush those away from the tar and get them out of there and pick them out, you have like divots in the tar, right? And even if we got those C cups and the chem curb in it, it has to go fill all those divots, and those divots happen on the edges of that thing. A lot of companies turn tar and gravel away. Like they won't even do the project because they don't want to take the liability on of that risking. And tar and gravel is said to be one of the riskiest to install on that could create roof leaks. Steve, what's your stance on this?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with that, right? That it's a high liability install because it's just it's a, what's the word? I don't want to say cheap, but it kind of is a cheap way to insulate your home from weather. And so it's not the best, most effective way. And thus, introduces the risks of more leaks, water damage, things like that. They're kind of a pain, if I'm being honest, from an installer perspective. To get roof attachments on there correctly, you have to scrape out that gravel to get a nice, clear, smooth surface. That takes time. Again, these installs take longer than a typical install does with, regular attachments, I should say, or more standardized attachments. So I tend to shy away from tar and gravel for the same reason. But if you do find a company that wants to take on that liability, great. They're probably going to charge you extra for it for the exact same reasons.
So, salespeople, this is me speaking to you. There's technical stuff from Steve saying, hey, probably walk away from this. We now get into the Facebook battles of like, you're immoral for selling it, or you are like, it's going to leak. Companies won't do it. So why do some companies do it, and why do some sales reps say that they can? I did when I was at Helig, I did go find companies that were willing to do it. And like Steve keeps mentioning, it really is 100% up to the company whether they want to take on that liability or not. And we can't get mad at them. That's not something that we can dictate. Hey, your business and you're not willing to take that risk for me. Screw you. I'm out. It's okay. You get mad at someone for not wanting to drive with a seatbelt versus it's a weird argument to have because it's not your business and your house is not on the line like theirs is if something goes wrong. Right. So it's not something to get frustrated or upset about. One thing you can do is go find a company that is willing to take on that liability. Then we run into the obstacle of other sales reps looking at you like, you shady person. You've just gone on this webinar and you heard Steve say that it's likely going to leak and people aren't willing to take it on, and you should care about your homeowner. And I do. But I also am not going to dictate what they do. And so what I say to homeowners is I say, hey, there are some companies out there that think it's going to leak. Because they brush the gravel away, it has divots, and they can never really waterproof it properly. And there's some companies out there that say that they can do it, and they are willing to take on that liability. And remember, the contract says that they have to repair it if it does happen within this time. Ultimately, the decision is yours because you have a weighing scale here. I would say that roofers would probably agree that it's not easy to waterproof like an actual trained professional roofer. But then these solar companies have the liability of fixing your roof if it does. You have a tar and gravel roof. This is completely up to you. I am here as a waiter. I'm going to take your order. Would you like solar or would you not? I am an order taker. My job is to explain to you how it works. This is how they fasten it. This is how they say they waterproof it. And as you can see, others have done it. But I want you to make this decision. How do you feel? And I like to do that because it takes the morale issue away from me. As long as I have been honest and transparent and told them both sides, it's not my decision. I'm not the one playing God and playing the moral or immoral role here. My job is to be truthful and honest with them and allow them to pick because it is their house. We don't know the reasons they want to go solar. We don't know the reasons maybe they need the tax credit. Maybe it's a stipulation, a goal they had for their New Year's resolution. Who knows? But it's not something that I feel as a sales rep I can dictate. All I can do is tell them the risk factor involved with it to my knowledge and my education. Okay. Next up, Steve, what do you guys? Oh, I don't think that you guys have ever site surveyed this. I'm talking trash here. 750 site surveys a month. Have you ever site surveyed a roof that looks like this? Have you seen one?
I mean, I'm guessing that is some sort of plastic. It's not, or composite. Is that a composite shingle of some kind?
Ceramic.
Oh, yeah, it's really rare. Very rare.
It is so rare. In fact, it's also expensive. When you see these blue tiles, when I first saw it, I was like, wow, those must be solar. They're not. But it's a ceramic tile, and I would treat these just like you would clay tile. Probably a little bit more, because if these tiles break, they're very hard to find and replace. And if they do find them to replace them, they're expensive. If you see a ceramic tile roof, I'll tell you personally, I just walk away. So here's my favorite roof type to talk about. It's not my favorite roof type to sell. My favorite roof type to sell is asphalt shingle. But this is my favorite roof type to talk about, because we say metal roofs, but a lot of people don't know there's actually 3 different types of metal roofs. Corrugated, the one that looks wavy, as you can see. And then there's standing seam. If you sell SunPower, they use this on their cover a lot. They have this actual color roof type on that, and it's standing seam. So wavy like this, and it comes in long sheets, and you just stack them and you fasten them to the trusses that are there. Then you have standing seam. It's flat, another flat, and then it comes up to a seam, and they pinch it together. And then you have stone coated. I imagine, I don't know if this is how it's done, but I imagine a factory of a blob of metal, and then it goes into this big press that presses it, and it comes out, and it looks like this. Then they throw glue over the top of it and throw this grainy stuff over the top to make it look like shingle. And the first time I saw this, I was walking through a neighborhood, and I was like, what the hell is that? You guys, I heard jingle bells happening as I was walking down the sidewalk, because as the rain hit this rooftop, it looked like an asphalt shingle roof, but it sounded like ting, 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 ting. And it was kind of cool. But those are the 3 metal roof types. Now, you guys heard me talking about the, let me go back here, actually. You guys heard me talking about lightweight tile, like this wood shake and this Spanish clay. And another one of those is this stone-coated stamped metal right here. That's the time you would use this, is if you wanted to cover those up, if you wanted a different aesthetic look. It's lightweight, weighs almost nothing, it's waterproof. If you want to put it over, a lot of times they put it over wood shake. A lot of times they take the shake off and they just put it up like it is, because it's lightweight. But when you see something that looks so dang uniform, unlike the asphalt shingle that looks, like Tetris, when you see something that looks far more uniform and it just looks like picture perfect, that might be your stone-coated steel or your stone-coated metal roofs there. Treat that like the lightweight clay. Likely will not happen. Likely will not get it installed. But Steve, do you want to tell us what you are looking for on corrugated and on standing seam?
Yeah. Again, it comes back to the type of attachment that I need to use. And so, I'm obviously looking for the thickness of the metal, because they are different thicknesses. We get in Texas, you see this a lot, right? Where there's a lot of metal roofs in Texas. And there's a lot of DIY kind of roofs out there that are metal. And so we are always looking for the thickness of that metal, obviously, because that's structural integrity. I'm going to be walking on it. I'm going to be putting a lot of weight on there. The thinner, less likely, it is to be structurally sound. And then corrugations are, sorry, I'm trying to depict that, but they're built in a press at different lengths, widths, and heights. And so we want to make sure, again, that we're measuring those things, because that dictates the type of attachment that I need to make that a good solid install. Standing seam is my favorite because it requires minimal effort. I just need to know really the height of that standing seam, because I'm going to just put a clamp down, pinch it, and mount the solar on top of that. And that's really easy for installers, in my opinion. More dangerous because it's a metal roof, right? They're slicker, more likelihood of falling, but easy for installation. By the way, that attachment costs more money. So just keep that in mind. That's typically why you would see, varying adders there. Is that clamp that I'm referring to costs more money. The stone coated is interesting. I first came across this in solar probably on my 10th install ever in Park City, Utah. I started walking on the roof. I was doing the survey, and I was denting the metal, and I was trying to lift it. And then I quickly noticed that it comes in sheets, big sheets, like sometimes 4 feet wide, 3 foot wide, 6 feet, 8 feet long. And I remember thinking, I have no idea how I would ever install solar on this. When I started asking, all I got hit with was these are lifetime warranty roofs. That's why they're so popular, is because they last forever. But you mess with it and you void all that warranty. And so what I kept running into was roofers wouldn't uphold their warranties unless they helped do the installation of the mounting. And that's why these get DQ'd a lot is, well, now I have to go work with a roofing contractor and I have to coordinate with him, and he's got to come and make sure he does all his cuts perfectly. And, it's just like not worth it at the end of the day. It's really complicated. You just took a simple job and made it way more complex. Now we're off the rails. I'm more likely to not consider it at that point, right? So to Jake's point, a quick way to identify it is just knock on it. It's obvious when it's aluminum. It's actually aluminum based, and they are a pain.
Yeah,
doesn't mean you can't do it. They're just a pain, and I could see why a lot of installers would walk away from it.
Yeah, if you're walking down a street and you see all this asphalt shingle, and then you see one that just looks like it's asphalt shingle, but it just looks way too good. It's too uniform. That's your metal roof. That sticks out. But you have to be looking at roofs. Like now when I drive, I don't look at any one or anything. I just look at rooftops the whole time. That would be good for solar. That one would. I'm sure you guys do the same if you're in sales, but
all the time.
But here's the sales tip with the metal roofs. You guys, those standing seam metal roofs are the easiest for installers. They love them because, like Steve said, you basically just clamp to that steam. Let me pull. You clamp to that seam that's right here. It's a little clamp that goes on it, and then they get to fasten the racking to it. It's super easy. Don't have to penetrate the roof. Corrugated. Typically, these are done. There's some states that they use it on the residential homes, but a lot of states use this on detached sheds or garages or things like that. And when they do that, like let's say it's a big barn or something, I've often found that the trusses underneath are very far apart, and because they don't need it for a residential house build, right? So they put those trusses very far apart, and it's just one long metal beam for almost the duration of the entire barn, and then the next one is 4 feet away. Can you sell on that? Some installers say, yeah, if you use a thicker racking or use a thicker what am I looking for? Yeah, thicker racking. They come in different gauges. If they're that far apart, you can still do it, but you'd have to use a thicker gauge, and that costs more money. Steve, what do you say to that?
Yeah, it's all about structural integrity, and depending on the AHJ and their requirements will dictate whether that's good enough or not, and if I need to upgrade it or not. And again, those things are hard to determine until someone gets out there to take those measurements, take those photos, things like that, right? Like I would just be guessing from a satellite image looking. I could see that maybe it's a corrugated roof, but I would have no idea if it's structurally sound without being on site.
Yeah, you guys. So here's the sales tip. When I come across a corrugated roof, I like to see underneath it, because if those trusses are further apart, I will tell the homeowner, hey, we're going to use a thicker gauge racking. So we have to charge a little bit more for those because this is so far apart. And then I'll Google search the same image I showed you with the trusses. They're only 24 inches apart. They get it. They understand. Thicker gauge racking costs a little more, and it doesn't hurt. And I can add that onto the price. So when I go back to my installer and they say that their trusses are too far apart, I can say, oh, don't worry. I added for the thicker gauge racking. They might not even know that you know that. But the fact that you pull that out is now going to have to force them to say, okay, we actually just don't want to do it. Or it's going to force them to say, okay, I guess you're right, we can. And I'm telling you, more times than not, they say, okay, yeah, that's a good point. We could do that. You guys, when you go through the solar manual training, more frequently than not, if you have this knowledge, you can help your installers find a solution. Like, hey, I just told them that we're going to do thicker gauge racking. It just costs more. I already added it in there. I'm not going to be mad. It's in there for you. Use it. If you do that, your installers are more likely to say, okay, yeah, I guess we'll do it. But if you don't do those things and you don't know those things, you don't even know to bring it up to ask them. You don't know to charge for it. You don't know to tell them it's okay if they take it out of your commission because you understand the process. If you can understand the process and what they're going through and what they're going to have to deal with, then they're more likely to be like, yeah, let's go ahead and do this project. I keep telling you, if you know this stuff, you will make more money in solar. You don't have a lead generation problem. You have a knowledge problem. You need to understand this language to speak with your installers because it will get your projects in faster, healthier contracts. You won't need re-signs. You can have these conversations with guys like Steve. You guys, just beautiful stuff that we're going over here.
I got a quick question for you.
Yeah,
I've
David.
heard that I've been told by an installer in the past that they really don't they don't recommend installing on corrugated roofs because they were prone to leaks.
That is probably something they're telling you as a sales rep. Either one, they don't want to do it, and that's their answer to. Two, they don't want to take on the liability of it. But I don't think it's been a problem with corrugated roofs. Steve, what do you say to that?
Yeah, it's again, to me, it's like, well, if it's installed properly with the right things, it probably will be fine. It's just, do I want to take on that liability? Honestly, is what it comes down to. And do I feel like I can charge enough to get it done?
On the liability ranking, compared to asphalt shingle, which we know every installer loves, on the liability rating, where does it range from asphalt shingle?
Lots. I would say at least twice as likely to leak for sure. Because because there's
corrugated
usually,
though, not
just any metal really, because there's usually typically nothing underneath it, right? It's exposed, so you're relying on a very minimal protection between the screw, and whatever it is you're attaching, as opposed to now, an OSB kind of underlayment or whatever. You've got another layer of kind of barrier, I guess, for water to get through, and
so
I've installed on a lot of metal roofs that I didn't think were going to leak, and they did. So for those reasons, I'm inclined to, not do as many. But every EPC is again different with their assessment on that risk.
I would say it's not uncommon though. I would say, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, I would say it's actually more common that companies do corrugated metal than don't.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that answer. Another question. I don't know if this is the right call for it. If not, let me know. But speaking of the installations on the roofs, maybe somebody has a 2-year roof. I've gotten this objection a lot. I don't want to install solar on my roof because the roofer is going to void the warranty if you guys install solar on the roof. What do you say to that? Is there truth to that? Is there a workaround for that? Is this the right call for that?
Yeah, I know what I would say. I don't know what Jake would say, but I would say, some roofs and roofing companies will use that as a mechanism to avoid the roof. But I would say, does your EPC work with a roofing company, or are they a roofing company that can just back it with their own warranty? So it's like, great, walk away from that contractor. We have our own, and we're gonna stack on it with our own warranty. So there's no harm, no foul. That's, to me, probably what needs to happen anyway. But
David, what was your question? My mic unplugged, or
my question was, I come across this often. Maybe somebody has a pretty new roof, couple years old, and they don't want to install solar on the roof because the roofer told them if they install solar, that's going to void their warranty. And oftentimes, they might have a 25-year warranty, 50-year warranty, lifetime warranty, and a lot of installers do maybe 10-year penetration warranties. So there's a discrepancy there. So I was just wondering if there's any truth to that, or kind of workarounds. And
I absolutely love that question when I get that. I love that question because I know one thing: they're full of it. They're just full of it. It's not even a question I would put any weight or merit to, because there's literally, David, Steve, let's say I work at Dunder Mifflin right now. Do you guys want to buy 85 reams of paper? Yes or no? Oh, because I work at Dunder Mifflin, Steve. Right now, today, do you need 85 reams of paper, David? No, you don't. And I know that you don't because we're not in a meeting about it, right? I know that they want solar because we are in a meeting about it. I'm literally sitting in their home talking about solar because they wanted to learn about it. and they come at me with that question, oh, we just got a new roof. We don't know if we want to do it. That's not even a real concern. It's not even a real question. They already want solar. What they're really asking you is, hey, how can you make us feel more comfortable about the roof that we just got? Or what protections are there for the roof, right?
I guess I've gotten it more on the door than actually being in an appointment.
Okay, that's fair.
I've had that like, hey, just got a new roof. Now we're not interested in solar. Roofer said they'll avoid the warranty.
Okay, that's fair. At that point, they don't necessarily want solar because you're not sitting in the home. So you need to overcome that, right? So in that scenario, most trainers, and probably I would tell you as well, I would say most trainers would tell you to say, oh, that's funny. One of your neighbors said the same thing, or one of your friend, or someone in the neighborhood said the same. I always put it on a referral because I like referral based business. And this trick I learned from Ben Mack. I say, actually, most of my referrals, I tend to deal with people just like you. They care about their homes and, don't want their roof to leak. They don't want it to look bad. Most of the homes I deal with are a little bit more, they have their stuff together like you do. So I stroke their ego a little bit like that. I tell them I deal with this all the time. Yeah, they take care of their home at a different level than most neighbors. I'm glad you guys have a new roof. In fact, most of the homes I deal with just have a new roof because this is not 100% your decision. It's also the installer's decision. And you'd be surprised, installers come back and tell homeowners, hey, we're not going to do this because your roof is too risky. And so I would actually put it back on you and say, you don't want to get solar because you got a new roof. I'd come back and say, we would only do solar because you have a new roof, right? And that's where these referrals that I got, they're saying the same thing you did. That's where they kind of got mixed up a little bit, is they didn't understand that a newer roof means better waterproofing. And sure, what we do is we go in that roof and yes, we take a drill with a big bit and we drill through the thing that's supposed to waterproof your house. You don't want to come home and see lakefront property inside of your kitchen. That's not why you got a new roof. But all of the installers, they have the protections on their side. But here's what I would recommend doing. Do you know which roofing company you used?
Oh, yeah.
We use this company. All right, great. What we do and what I've done with the referrals that I've used with it, I just get their number because I don't want you guys to worry about this. I want you to grab a glass of lemonade and sit back and watch this thing happen. This shouldn't be your stress. My job is to bring the answers to you. So what I'll do is I'll call the roofing company and see if they can be there at that time and make sure that it's waterproof properly. I don't even mind covering that cost because it's going to, $500 or something for them to come out. I'll cover that. They'll sign off on it and we'll be good to go there. If they don't sign off, we'll make sure that one of our guys that you feel comfortable with it and they can sign off on it. But we can go over more about that roofing stuff a little bit later if you guys actually decide that you want to do it. We don't even know if you guys want it yet. Right. And then I would roll on with the next thing.
Love it.
Helpful?
Very.
Okay, guys, here's my fun stuff. You guys, I love this because this has been one of the biggest difference makers for me is electrical. Now, I'm not going to talk about electrical on this training. That's going to be for a different one. But if we're talking about site surveys and what you can look for if you are a sales rep, whether you should walk away from that home, bring it up and add it to the price of your contract, or know that you're going to run into problems later, is looking at this next picture that I'm going to show you. You guys, I've been in a home where I have sold the homeowner and they were ready to go. And they had an electrical upgrade. It's a 200 amp, 225 bus bar, 200 amp panel, which anyone that knows electrical knows that's one of the bigger systems that you can fit a lot of panels on. So I was like, this is good to go. You guys are awesome. But I didn't pay attention to one thing. And what you can see here is a lot of discoloration around these panels and sometimes chipped out a little bit like this around these newer panels. And what's happened is the older electrical panel has to be taken out and then they put a new one in. And so anytime I see this kind of work done around an electrical panel, and yes, I do make it a point to look at those panels when I'm in the home. When I see this kind of work surrounding them, I know something has occurred. They have gotten an electrical upgrade. And I don't just leave it there. Oh, great. You guys have a big enough panel to get solar. You're good to go. That would be a rookie. That's what rookies do. I ask them another question. I say, hey, I see that you guys got an electrical panel. Did you guys do this yourself? Did a friend do it? Or did you get a permit for this? Is it permitted? Did you get a licensed electrician to come out and bust this out for you? And if they say something like, no, one of my best friends is an electrician. He just came in and did it one day. I'm like, oh my hell. Right? Steve, talk to us a little bit about this.
Yeah, it's in the same vein of you touch it, you own it. That's how installers are looked at from a code compliance or city inspector, whatever it is. If you're touching it, you own it. So anything that is wrong, you're liable to fix it, and they're going to enforce you to fix it. And so as an installer, obviously, if something was recently upgraded or changed or whatever, I'm going to want to know, is the work up to code? Because if it's not, I eat the cost, or I have to pay the bill to fix it, right? And that's the danger there that we want to try to avoid. So I love that Jake's calling that out, because this happens a lot.
One of the most sad things, David, you're on here, so I'm going to talk to you. One of the most sad things that I have seen in this industry is I'll teach someone that, and they'll go in the home and they won't care. They'll literally sit in there, sign the contract, do the paperwork, and they're like, bro, I got another close, man. Gonna go to their office, raise their hand, put a tally mark on the board. And if it was me, because I was like that, bro, I got one. When I did that, I used to think, okay, I moved to San Diego. I can go surfing now. I can hang out with my friends. I closed 5 jobs this month. None of them went in. Couldn't pay my rent the next month because I was like 25, 22, whatever. I wasn't responsible. Let's just put it that way. I thought that I'd sold enough. Now I can go out and play rather than keep working like an adult does. So I figured I had all of his commission coming in, to find out that I did not, because I didn't, when I was sitting in the home, I didn't say, oh, you have a new panel. I saw, I didn't ask the question, is it licensed? Did you get a permit for it? Did you do it, or did a friend do it? If you're not doing that, now that you know this, and that project doesn't go in, what a waste of time. You're wasting people's lives. I'm just going to put it that bold. You're wasting your installer's monies. You're wasting the site surveyor. You're increasing the red lines for everyone else, because they have to pay to go out and do the site survey to look at that same image and be like, yeah, we can't do this. It's not permitted. You just cost people money to tell you the same thing that you could do at a glance. You see what I'm saying? And at a glance, I could look at that and I could say, hey, oh, your friend did it? Okay. Well, and I've done this, and I'm going to tell you that this is not for you guys to go out and practice, but I am going to tell you. I said, okay, one thing you might want to do, because some installers do this, and Steve, I want you to speak to this. Some installers say, well, just say it was existing. It was there before we got there. We don't know if it was existing or if it's new, and it looks like this. So what I've told people is like, look, it's going to look like a new upgrade. The inspector's not an idiot. What I would do is I would match the color of that paint. And you guys, it's hard to match the color of stucco paint. Another expectation I set with the homeowner, if they're getting an upgrade and they have stucco, I say, they're going to cut it up. It looks like this. They're going to try to match that paint the best they can, but the side of your house has been sitting in the sun for 85 years, and it's going to look like a different color. When I went to Home Depot, they don't have sun bleached gray. They have gray, right? And so when I put that on there, it may look different. They may be able to tell, but at the very least, you should try to do something and maybe scratch those things up and put marks on it to make it look older, because it looks like a new electrical panel. Or we can add the cost in of going and getting this thing permitted and check the work to make sure it's going to pass inspection. You guys, if this upgrade was done in California and the gas meter was right below it, is no way it's going to pass inspection, because it would need to be relocated at that point, and an inspector is going to call that out. So look at the electrical panels, look for signs of life like this, or signs of indicators like this that will save you and your company a lot of money. David, you were going to ask something?
It kind of slipped my mind.
It's all right. If it comes back, let me know.
Oh, actually, just curious, what would you say it generally costs to do a site survey? What's it cost the company?
The company cost is going to be relative to that company. Do they have 85 W-2 employees and one site surveyor, or do they have 2 employees and one site surveyor? Or are they doing 100 accounts a month? Or are they doing 3? Steve, you can answer that a little bit better.
No, yeah, I love that you said that, because am I sending my guys 50 miles away or 60 miles away or 100 miles away? How often am I doing that? All those things affect my costs. So, right, fuel expenses. Are they running their own vehicles? Am I supplying them? Like, all those affect it. But I would say a general rule of thumb is, if you consider all of the costs associated to deploying an asset out to a home, that includes all of your software, G&A, hard labor costs, fuel expenses, all those things, right? You're going to be north of $400 unless you're super efficient, sticking within a small radius, which I just don't know any companies that are able to do that. Yeah, I would say typically, that 400 is probably a good mark. But what I often see is that being devalued and we're just associating the actual labor cost, which is maybe $100.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's no joke. And I know a lot of companies are a lot of reps, and it comes from the manager down selling the site survey, just get somebody out there, that's wasting the company money.
I think at this point, I'm going to drop one of the biggest pieces of gold that I can when I'm negotiating terms with a new installer. One of the things that I put in there, because I'm teaching you guys all of this stuff that I look for, I genuinely believe that my company, myself as a sales rep, can bundle up and package an account in a nice wrapping and ribbon and bow and place it on their desk and tell them, literally, this is the cost. This is my commission. This is what you're looking forward to. You have an electrical upgrade. You're going to have to trench. We added a utility pole over here. I called and it's going to be this much. I talked to the utility company. Your reconnect, disconnect time is at this time. And I just list things out in an email, and I'll probably show these on one of these trainings. And I send that to them. And I tell them, when you guys generate that CAD that you're going to submit for a permit, you've already told me that you are the best company I could possibly work with. Every installer says that, right? I haven't heard an installer say, you should go with other companies before you talk to us. Like, every installer is the best. So I said, you've already said you're the best. And if you're going to send a site surveyor out, that's your person that works at your best company ever that you trust to provide that quality that you're telling me. So if that site surveyor has gone out and gotten that data and they bring it back to you at your best company ever, your best engineers are putting a CAD together to submit to get the best permit that I could have gotten, then that's why I'm working with you, right? So if you submit for a permit and you have not told me a cost that I missed on that email that I sent you, it becomes your expense. Are you okay with that? And I have had contract. I've done it with many installers, national ones and small ones. I have put in my agreement that if you submit for a permit without telling me what the adder expenses are going to be that you found, then the adders are now your cost and not mine, because I have to have the ability to be able to go and re-sign that homeowner before any costs are incurred to the company. Because if they're going to charge me for cancellations or permits or these other things, they certainly cannot do that without notifying me of an expense, and that notification would come from that site survey, right? So if they're submitting for a permit, basically and ultimately what they're telling me and my homeowner is that they have done their due diligence, they have done their work, they have done it with the people that they trust, and this is their best assessment of that project. I need to know if there's an adder on that. So I put that nugget in my contract. You must tell me the adder expenses before you submit for permit. Otherwise, that liability falls on you. And some of them haven't signed it, but most do. And I'm okay with it. But I want to put the most accurate thing, because I never want re-signs, and I want to look awesome to that installer. Because that installer, the more awesome I look and the more likely they know the quality that I bring in that pretty wrapped package in a bow, the more likely they are to sign that agreement. And there's other things I put in my agreements too, but that one protects my team from getting losses, because I'm asking a company to do exactly what they promised me, and I'm educated enough to hold them to it, right? Okay. Whoo, you guys, we've gone a long time. Don't worry, we're almost done. Thank you for doing this. This is awesome research for the book. Next thing I wanted to show you is on the electrical side of things, there are electrical panels that have been discontinued, and they are very easy to spot. In fact, I'm going to show you how. One of them is, if you see all of these red stickers along the side, that's called a Fed pack. That's how the gangsters call it, is a Fed pack. The way it's written on there is it's a Federal Pacific panel. So anytime you see those red tabs on those breakers, that's a strong indicator, or quite often when you see stab lock type of panel.
What's stab lock? Oh, that brand.
Steve?
It's just the style of the breaker connection to the main bus. So It was thought to be a good method to attach breakers to a bus. It's since determined it has a high likelihood of causing fires, and so slowly over time, the infrastructure of the homes out there have been replacing them to a higher quality standard type panel.
Another time that you're going to see a discontinued panel is if you see this kind of discolored opaque baby blue with red. A lot of time this signifies a Zinsco panel. So anytime you see this branding, Zinsco panels have also been discontinued. Same with Federal Pacific panels. When you do the electrical training, there are some companies that feel comfortable bypassing this with something called a Hawaiian tie-in or a sub as main or a whole lot of other terms since it was existing, but we'll get into that in the electrical. Safe to assume and safe to bet, though, that when you see these panels on a home, you should and there's a couple others that we'll add in the book as well, but you should definitely plan on an electrical upgrade with this one. Cool. All right. Now, talking about electrical, there's some people that get cutesy with their electrical, like you see over here on the right. In fact, we see some influencers that have gotten very cute with it up here on the top right. And they built something that still gives access to the utility company, but it is not allowed. It will fail inspection. You're not allowed to build things over electrical like this. And I have even seen it where pergolas or patio covers have been built over electrical, which will also not pass inspection. Steve, do you want to speak a little bit to this?
Yeah, I mean, the general rule of thumb is just remember the meter is not yours. It's the utilities. And so it's not yours. It's, I don't know how else to put that. Just keep that in mind. It's not yours. So
can't cover it, can't put decks over it, can't put patios over it, can't put coverings over it. If this has been done, then I tell the homeowner, I'm like, yeah, I love it. I'll probably go do it to my house. But while we're doing this, that doesn't exist, right? And so they go take it off because it will not pass. In fact, if a site surveyor sees this, an engineer sees it, they'll DQ it. Sometimes, though, this slips through the cracks. Sometimes they'll see this stuff and they'll continue with the project. They get their install day and they cancel install day, and the sales rep's all frustrated and mad. Well, you should have told me. And my thing is, no, my friend, you should have known. David, is learning that covering an electrical panel is not going to pass inspection and can't do the project anymore? Was that a hard lesson to learn?
It was easy for me because I'm just on this call. But if I would have lost that deal over it, like you said, oh, you should have known. I didn't know that. Now I do. Like you said, I've been doing this 4 years. Never heard that.
Yeah. So you guys are
sense though.
So for those of you that are on this call right now, and David, you as well, you are learning the technical information here is not a bad thing. I'm not going to go into every home and be like, did you know that if you cover your electrical panel, it's not pertinent to that job, right? Standing seam metal roof. Hey, it's going to be a little more expensive because this is how they fasten it. Like, knowing this information allows me to price things properly and allows me to look like the professional. Things like this, because no other companies probably, David, if you and I went in a house together and we sold this exact same house, you probably wouldn't have mentioned this to them, right? And you probably would have been bewildered as to why they didn't go with you and they went with me instead. Like, what was it? My pricing is more expensive. We have a better product. But it's because I know stuff. I know things that I get to tell them to make them more comfortable. Okay. Next, you guys, this is one of the things on ground mounts. Let's say you have a light tail roof like wood shake or clay tile or the stone coated metal that we talked about, and you need a different solution. Like, you need a ground mount, for example. When you're doing ground mount site surveys, typically that comes with the territory of having a lot of space to do a ground mount. And typically when you have a lot of space, you're not in downtown cities. Typically you're on the outskirts of a city, and more frequently than not, I've learned that these ground mounted systems that happen in county or on the outer skirts of town typically have septic tanks to them because they have larger fields. And if they have a septic tank, there's these things called leach lines that drain out of the septic tank and go into the soil like this. So this home where they say, hey, we want the array right here, we want the ground mount right here, or we want it right here, we can't do that because we know that there's a septic tank underneath, or we know that there's leach lines in that area. Leach lines are typically not built on a flat ground. They're typically built on a sloped ground, a lot of times perfectly sloped for solar. So sales reps go and be like, that looks like a beautiful spot. It's wide open. There's a little bit of an angle to it. Like, it's great. What they don't know is that might actually be exactly where the leach lines are. All right. And some homeowners actually know. If you're smart enough to ask the question, hey, do you know if the leach, there's your septic tank. You'll see it because a lot of times this little plastic hub is sticking out somewhere. This one happens to be propane, but you'll see these little hubs sticking out. And you'll know the sloped ground is likely where the leach lines are. You're like, hey, do you know if your leach lines are here? They're like, yeah. Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't. But you cannot install solar on it. And so many times I've gone to ground mounted quotes and proposals where they proposed it right over the leach lines. But because I saw that angle and I saw the septic and I asked the question, wait, are your leach lines here? They say, yeah. Like, those other proposals you got are inaccurate. They won't be able to do it. We'll have to put it over here away from the leach lines. I know there's trees there and I know it's not ideal. I know it's going to add shading and you have to buy 5 more panels to meet the same production, but you will not be able to pass by putting it over those leach lines. Steve, anything to say to that?
Yeah, and I would say even if they were able to get it through inspections and things like that, high risk, right? We're drilling holes into the ground. You don't want to drill a hole into your leach system or into your tank, obviously.
Yep. Further than that, they a lot of these properties have to have a secondary place for leach lines. There has to be a second location in case these ones need to be discontinued. There's a second location on the property for leach lines, and you can't install on that second area either. Those areas are described in the city. If you go to the city and you ask them to pull plans, they'll literally go back to a filing cabinet, pull out a plan of this house because they have records of all the homes. 99.9% of the time, and they can go through and tell you these are the areas where leach lines are, and they will stamp your plans or they will not. Simply asking the homeowner where they are will avoid a lot of this pain, a lot of this stress, a lot of re-signing, because if you sign it here and they do the survey and they go pull those plans and see that you do have to put it under the trees, then now you have to go back to the homeowner and say, we can't put it in these 2 places we proposed, but now we can put it in the 3rd, and it's only going to cost you 5 more panels. That is so much worse of a conversation to happen than, hey, we really can't do it here. I'm sorry those other companies told you. It will cost you 5 more. And doing it at the point of sale, you will get referral-based business. You will have the proper price contract. You will avoid re-signs. All of the reasons that we're here. And Steve, I want you to talk a little more on propane tanks because I'm less educated on them. But I did have a home that we sold in a rural area that did need to move their propane tank in order for us to trench a line to their electrical. What do you know about this?
Yeah, sometimes they're installed without asking permission. Same thing as anything else, right? It's they're out of code or compliance. That would cause for a relocation, or they're just not in a spot that's conducive to what you're trying to do. And that, we've got to cross lines. I don't like trenching over a propane line for obvious reasons. I just don't want to blow anybody up, and so that would require us moving it. That's it, really. It's how is it going to affect the project? Those things have to be taken into consideration because obviously ground mounts require trenching, period. And so
how would we tell from a layman's point of view, or from obviously we can't see underground, but what's a very good indicator that there might be a line running that way from the propane?
You mean just like, how would I indicate where it's at? Or
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm looking for the propane tank. Is there propane being run to the home? Are the appliances powered by gas, natural gas, propane, right? This is more common in Florida. You got a lot of standalone tanks that are just kind of hanging out there. Obviously, if there's a propane tank, there's a line being run somewhere. And, you can tell, obviously, where it comes into the house because there's usually some sort of a piece of equipment or regulator that's mounted before it enters your home. It's a pressure regulator so that, it can regulate how much pressure of gas is being pumped to your home. Similar to like an electrical meter or, gas meter, obviously.
Now, if you guys are doing ground mounts, or you're doing a carport, or you're doing a patio cover, or you're doing anything like that, building a different structure, there's a area out here called Rancho Bernardo in San Diego. It's where the rich people live. And like literally you go there and they have the fields for their horses like surrounding their house, right? And on where these horses are, they've built fences, but there's places for vehicles to drive on the grass and people to walk and ride their horses and stuff. But they wanted us to build structures over that walkway that they wanted them high enough that they could still sit on their horses and walk underneath them. We've all heard this with carports. We've heard many different things. You're going to come across some niche things. And what I didn't know about all of this, carports and ground mounts and all of that, one interesting thing is that you actually have to know every county, every city HJ, it has to be a certain distance away from the property line. I didn't know that. So you can't just go promising people that you're going to place things at places. There's distances that you need from property lines, and each AHJ will tell you what those are. In fact, if you are going to do a patio cover or something for horses to walk under, whatever it might be, an attachment to a garage, a shed, any of that stuff, you might want to just Google search or ask the city what the property line offset is, and it's different from the front of the house. If you let's say you wanted to do a ground mount in the front of the home, it might only need to be 3 feet away from the street, but the back of the home might need to be 6 feet away, and the side might need to be 15. It's all going to vary. It's not uniform around surrounding the whole home. It's all going to vary depending on the HJ that you're in and what sided that you're trying to build on. So property lines are important. I went through when I was selling, and I learned in the areas where what the property lines needed to be. I just nerd out on that stuff a little bit. But Steve, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, HOAs also can dictate some of that. I've run into that before too. Hey, you can't do them, period, or they have to be a certain size or length or whatever. Something else to consider is the HOA.
Very cool. Okay, I didn't know that. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to get off the technical stuff a little bit because we're going to be wrapping up here pretty soon. I just wanted to ask you some quick questions. Can you teach us all how electrical works? No, I'm just kidding. I want to ask you a quick question. What about site survey as a tire? Why is every company? Some companies care, some don't. Some companies sub out and they show up in these dinky little nasty trucks. What are your thoughts on subbing out the site surveyors? You're subbing. You're a site surveyor that's subbed out. Companies hire you. How do you show up to properties, and what's your opinion on the attire of a surveyor?
Well, first impressions are everything, right? So it's really good to show up looking professional. You're asking the homeowner to put a lot of trust in who's showing up to your home, and looks are everything, right? So you want somebody that looks presentable for obvious reasons. A way to maybe a tip that I would have for anybody, regardless whether it's internal, subbed out, is put an element of QC within your process. So at Radical, we have our agents take selfies in front of the home to make sure it's the right guy at the right place, and that we can verify what he looks like, right? That's an easy thing to implement, and I would recommend it for anybody whether it's in-house, outsourced, doesn't matter. Is probably best practice there.
Awesome. Some companies don't require their surveyors to be branded. I know it costs money for shirts. Is there any other reason why they might be so lax about that? Or
yeah, it's all about the expectations that are set. So typically, like with a third party company like ours, the expectation is, look, we have a company that's coming out to assess. They're deployable. They're available quicker, and that's why we go with them. They're just going to come in, tread lightly, get in and out as fast as possible. To me, it's really about whatever expectation you want to set. I definitely have seen those companies that are very hard pressed about the branding and making sure that it's fluid throughout the entire process. It's just a different strategy. I don't think there's really a right or wrong there. It's just, more importantly, are the expectations set properly? And if yes, in my experience, it does not matter.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. And we're wrapping up here, so I'm gonna show you guys. We have 2 more points to go over for site surveys, but before I get to them, I wanted to show you. Let's see here. I wanted to show you one thing that you may have already seen if you registered for this. Okay, pull this up. All right, here we go. On here, you guys have seen a little bit further down, you registered for your session right here. But right here is a book pre-order, which you can do. And I know it's a little bit early for that. I know it's a little early for the book pre-ordering, But let me show you. We've already gotten a few sales on this, and let me show you why real quick. Share screen. You guys have seen rough drafts of what this might look like. So the rough draft. Let's see. Oh, Joe, is this not able to show PDFs? Is that what I'm seeing? Joe, you there?
What's up? Yeah. Not showing you PDF.
Yeah. Does it show PDFs?
Yeah, you could just add it as a overlay if it's on.
Here, I'll just share. I'll share my whole window. Here we go. Share this one. Okay, so guys, here's an example. No, it's not going to let me do it on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut you guys. If you go to the solar objections groups or you go to some of the other groups, you'll see I've posted some electrical and some ground mount trainings, and there's some PDFs in there, and you can see how detailed they are. It's just an example, but this book is meant to be about 300-400 pages, and it's meant to be like an index. You go to the back and you look for ground mounts, like ground mounts. Where does it talk about it? Page 56, page 82, and you just flip to those and you read it. This is not meant for you to come on and memorize all of this stuff, although I would love you to do it because you can see how helpful it is. But if you don't want to memorize and learn it all, you can definitely refer to it. So don't be afraid to pre-order the book as we go through these. This is the first session. We have about 50 of them planned. So we are a ways out. The book should be released before SolarCon. It's going to take a lot of writing, editing. We're going to have custom images built in here, so I'm not just ripping them off Google. But feel free to support and get those if you'd like. Next thing I want to go over, Steve, with you as we wrap this up, I want everyone to be able to contact you. So I'm going to put your contact information up again, but just a quick question on parking. I know it's such a minute detail, but I remember working with a company where the company wanted to charge me $6,000 or something because they had pulled the truck into the driveway of the home and the driveway buckled, like it cracked from the weight of that truck versus their vehicles. Have you ever heard of anything as obscure as that, or any stories surrounding that?
Yeah, I have actually. My recommendation is whether you're doing a survey or doing an installation is stay off the driveway. You see that a lot, right? Box trucks back in because it's easy for the installers to just go straight up to the roof from the box truck. But I found that I put myself at risk anytime I drive on the driveway. And so I try not to just do it, period, as a standard practice. And I would say the same. That's what I would recommend to anybody is just stay off the driveway and then park your vehicle, obviously, in a way that's not going to obstruct the neighbors. Definitely seen things go south when the neighbor's trying to back out. He's late for work. And then he gets mad at his neighbor, right? And it just turns into this fight thing. But common sense goes a long ways here. I encourage you guys, whether you're, again, survey operations or install operations or even sales guys that are showing up with vehicles, park discreetly and, look at your surroundings. Make sure you're just out of the way. So
I didn't know that. It's good practice not to go on the driveway. It's good practice to park on the street. I'm definitely going to add that in the book for people to refer to. Okay, guys. I saved the very best for last, the very most badass, I guess I could have said, but I've saved the best for last. This is my golden nugget. Before I give that to you guys, though, we have one last video to show you. Joe, you play that video for us. It is 1 minute. That's okay. Stay on with us because you're not going to want to miss this next thing. Joe?
SolarCon, how are we? Amazing. Let's do this. I love selling. I love it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, everybody. I love this industry and I love bringing education to the industry. I love doing what I can do to make this industry just better every single day. And thank you everyone for being on here. I'm sure there's people that have come in and come out. David, huge thanks to you. Steve, I can't thank you enough for all the times you've helped me in my career and with SolarCon and with the awards and with this and with everything that we've ever touched. Without you, don't know where I'd be. Without Abby, Abby's been probably my biggest mentor in the solar industry and probably personal life. So she's been a tremendous help to me. Thanks for letting me borrow your wife at times, Steve. That's very kind of you as well. But you guys, I love this industry, and it's things like this, it's trainings like this that are going to help you succeed and make just tons more money. So here's my final thing that I wanted to go through for all of you. When site surveyors go to a home, a lot of times they're going to go to like 4 separate homes. Okay. They're going to take photos. Steve, how many photos do they take? Like 80 photos at a home?
Yeah, good one. I'd say, 80 photos.
Like 80 photos at a home. 80 photos. You guys, when you do that with your iPhone, that's not a lot of people do that with their iPhone. They're doing 80 at a home. And then sometimes they go to 4 or 5 of those in a day. And what they have to do is they have to go back and they have to upload all of that content to the software that the company has provided for them. Lord help us if they have to email it or some other rudimentary way of sending it. Like there's clean ways to do it. And Steve, I hope you can talk to us about that. But here's what I have learned to do. This is the most beneficial thing that you as a salesperson could do in your entire career. Is I mentioned when I was in the home and I had that list of the next steps and I'd write notes. Hey, we'll get you a gift card if someone missed it. I take a photo of that. I told you I put it in a folder. You guys, I take photos at the house myself. I do that because if you're a site surveyor and you're taking 80 photos per home times 4 homes, Joe, quick math, what is that? 320 photos that we're adding, that we're uploading. How many times have you guys uploaded photos and you didn't get that little blue check mark on one of them? What if that was the bus bar rating of your electrical panel? I'm telling you right now, when your installers receive those photos from the site survey, they're not going through and be like, hey, buddy, you missed the bus bar photo. That bus bar photo is literally the difference between an electrical upgrade or not. It's the difference between a relocation or not. It's a difference between running a new wire or cable or not. It is such a big and profound difference on the solar project that your commission, your homeowners, everything is at risk. And so what I do is if they don't upload that one photo, your company is basing this on the idea that photo, that sticker where that bus bar rating was not there. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, join the electrical training or go to the Facebook groups and find that. Just type in JCast. You'll find in the post that I did on electrical. But if that photo isn't there, you've just cost yourself a lot of money. And so the company assumes that the sticker didn't exist because the site surveyor didn't upload it. Site surveyor simply just missed it, right? They didn't upload it. So they're going to base it on the idea that bus bar rating is not what it should be. And they're going to do an electrical upgrade when you didn't need one. And here's the craziest statistic I can give you all. Joe's worked with me in other companies. You may know I've traveled the country and consulted companies. Over half the time an electrical upgrade is called for, it is inaccurate. And the problem is they don't have anything to cross-check it against. If you are going to say, I didn't think it needed one, you have nothing to cross-check it against, you had better be taking photos yourself as a sales rep and creating a folder of a homeowner's name, and every photo you take at that home, put it in there so that when the customer is frustrated that you didn't talk to them about something, or the installer says, hey, that tile doesn't weigh 10 pounds, it's lightweight, or hey, we had to do an upgrade because the bus bar rating wasn't high enough. You can now go back to your folder and check and make sure that you have the same data. Half of the time, my friends, half of the time, it's because they got bad data, or it's because they didn't get complete data and they don't want to go back. It costs money to go back. They also don't want to look like idiots, and certainly they don't want to incur the wrath of an upset sales rep. That's for damn certain. I promise you that. I've been through that myself. I just, one of those things I avoid. But it's important for you to take photos and put them in there yourselves. Now, when I talk about softwares, and this is what I want Steve to talk about, some awesome softwares have been created. And I've seen a software like Site Capture, where the company can actually say, okay, in this slot, site surveyor, I want you to upload the bus bar photo. So that when the engineer is going through and looking at the photos they need, it is categorized, it is clean, and it is organized. That's kind of the best way to do it. But if that photo is missing, it can be imperative to the finances and actually health of that entire account. Steve, what are some other softwares that you like, and what are some more refined ways of handling this?
Yeah, I mean, at Radical, obviously, we've created our own proprietary software to help with that process. It's very similar to a site capture. There's multiple others out there that help kind of guide you through the photos and where to place them and how to store them and how to transfer them. All those things are good. I think the key element too is what you do with that information. And so, I'll brag about it a little bit, but within whether you're using an internal survey process or you're using a third party, there should be an element of QC. This is the ability to make sure that not only did you take the photos and you organize them in a way that's digestible for the rest of the team to look at, but it's not blurry or it's the right information. I can't tell you how many times I've had a sales rep send me a sticker label but it's irrelevant. It has no value. It doesn't check the box of what we're actually looking for. And so having somebody in place in your process to visually check it, say, yep, that's good. And that's a service we do offer. And so I would encourage everybody to take advantage of that or get it implemented, some sort of a QC element with the photo package.
Very awesome. Last question for you. What is the policy around dogs? If you show up to the home, if a survey shows up to the home, dogs are running around, sales reps get upset. Do they leave? Do they go? Like, what's the policy on that?
Yeah, what we train our agents to do is obviously look for the signs of dogs. It's obvious when there's a dog. They'll usually come and greet you before you greet them, right? And first check is ask the homeowner to put them inside. I don't trust any dog. I don't ask anybody to trust a dog. It's just best practice not to. I learned this early. I used to be a meter reader for utility here in Utah, and I just copied and pasted what they trained us to do was see a dog, ask to have it put away. If it can't be put away, probably need to reschedule and come back. So an expectation sales can help with on this case is, hey, if you know there's a dog, we're going to come and do a survey. Could you please make sure the dog's tied up or put away? We just need to be able to walk around freely to do a good, efficient job. And if the dog's kind of in our way, even if it's happy, it's preferred that they're just not around, right? So I've definitely had to turn away from a home because of a bad dog or whatever. It's just not worth putting your people, yourself in that environment. They can be put away.
Everybody, thank you so much. David, Steve, thank you. Joe, thank you for moderating this, getting those questions up there and comments. Sean, thanks for putting this together. You guys, this has been a great experience for me as the very first session. This is going to go down in history for this book. Steve, thank you for letting me rip off all of your information and put it in the book. David, thank you for joining on and asking questions and adding the excitement to learning new information. Steve, I'm going to come to you as a last final note and comment for everybody. But before I do, David, do you want to tell us, some of your favorite takeaways from this and maybe what you're going to do after hearing all of it?
Yeah, I think I actually already commented on it, but the most powerful takeaway for me that I can take in a home now as a sales rep is taking, and it's real, the power of that. Hey, this project might not work. I can't tell you if we can do this or not. Just because we sign these agreements and just because you want to do solar doesn't mean it's going to go on your roof. We have a lot of liability. We're putting these panels on your roof. We're warranting everything for 25 years. We need to make sure, it's secure, it's solid, and the installer's not going to have to, come out of pocket a ton of cost because they're having to patch things up down the road. So I think that's the most powerful thing for me that I can implement right now today.
Thank you. Steve, tell us, what's a takeaway that we can take from all of this?
Expectations are everything is what I heard. And to properly set good expectations means you have to have knowledge. You have to be educated. And so whether your installer is educating you or you're self-educating through things like this, Jake's book, educate yourself so you can set proper expectations. I guarantee you everybody wins in that scenario. So.
And Steve, I didn't prep you for this. I'm going to ask you to give us some brief statements about Radical, why you believe in it, why it's different, what sets you apart from everyone else, or even in-house doing their own site surveys. Why would they use Radical and not hire a site surveyor at $100 a pop, like you mentioned on labor?
Yeah, sometimes, right, when we want to expand into new markets, do things that we're not sure about, or maybe it's an unfamiliar area, we don't necessarily want to lay down the cost outlay to get that up and running. And so Radical's a great resource to allow you to kind of flex. Sales is unpredictable at times. We don't know. And sometimes, we've outgrown my internal resource. And so we have a nice lever that we can lean on to continue to allow sales to continue to come in without expending new extra costs that come with internal building, right? And so it's a way to scale. And then the other big one is obviously quality. There is a huge advantage in my experience of installing a lot of solar. If you can standardize what comes in and how it comes in, you will exponentially speed up, reduce friction, costs, variables down the line. And so to me, the best place to do that is at survey. It's the most critical point to get all the information to set you up for success.
I did hear you say, I think I overheard you say at one point, I wish I recorded it, but it is, and I'm paraphrasing, but you say it's the most critical point of a solar project is the site survey. It's the one that dictates profitability, likelihood of doing the job itself, like any of that stuff. What do you say to that?
Yeah, it's our opportunity to eliminate variables, right? That's it. That's the best way I can sum it up. Without it, we're shooting in the dark, we're guessing, and things that have come up recently too is you're reminding me that it's also a way to mitigate problems after install. So I think we forget too that we're signing these customers up for 20, 25 years. We want to engage them on other services and products. And a lot of times when things go south, unfortunately, we want data to go back to rely on, to be the source of truth. This is what was pre-existing. This is what it looked like before we came to your home, and this is what it looked like after. Right? Documentation of this stuff is important as you grow and scale as a company. So
thank you, Steve. Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody. This has been awesome.
thanks.
All right, guys. Later.
See ya.